Hey everyone, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy the audiobooks, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support us further, consider becoming a Patreon member. As a member, you'll gain the ability to request the next part of a novel audiobook I've uploaded, depending on your Patreon tier.
The following year, I studied and practiced the various Rank 2 alchemy techniques in the Elder's Library. The limit of only being allowed to view one technique per month gave me just enough time to grasp the basics of one technique before moving on to the next. This didn't allow me to reach any level of mastery with the techniques, but that wasn't my goal. Instead, I wanted to gain a basic understanding of all the techniques first. Then, I would be able to build out a more comprehensive methodology for studying them in further detail. During this year, I also took the time to carefully read through every Rank 1 technique in the Elder's Library. I didn't need the fighting or cultivation techniques yet, and the alchemy techniques were all inferior to the Rank 2 manuals I already had access to, but I diligently copied them down in case they proved useful in the future. I wanted to read the Rank 2 cultivation and fighting manuals as well, but since I could only read one a month, I had to first focus on what would bring me the most immediate benefit. After this year of study, I was able to make Meridian Builder Pills efficacies as high as 105%. This was still far from what One House Blessing was able to accomplish, but it was a definite improvement over my previous efforts. At the same time, I took Deacon Lu's advice and started slowly increasing my cultivation base. When I hit Martial Master 4, I began to feel changes in my thought processes, but they were easy enough to suppress when necessary. I would have continued this slow improvement in seclusion, but Deacon Lu interrupted it. The competition to select new inner sect disciples was about to take place, and he wanted me to watch so that I could better understand my place in the sect. There were no venues capable of hosting large competitions in the village or on the mountain, so the Inner Sect Challenge was held in the same arena in the city as the Outer Sect competition. No nominal or servant disciples were allowed to attend, nor were they even informed about the event. The stands held only Inner Sect disciples, Outer Sect disciples, and deacons. The competition was to be judged by a panel of 3 elders who were sitting on a large dais at the front of the stadium. Below them, 20 competitors stood on the gray brick arena floor. Next to each of them was a well-maintained alchemy workbench made of burnished dark wood, and atop each workbench was an aged, well-used pill furnace. Standing on a small, raised platform behind the elders, placed above everyone else in the arena, a man dressed in elaborately embroidered robes of a dark blue hue oversaw the final preparations for the impending competition. He monitored the deacons as they delivered bundles of herbs to each of the competitors, and the elders occasionally approached him for short discussions. When everything was ready and the audience had all been seated, he walked to the front of his podium and turned to face the crowd. "Welcome, everyone. I am Tan Gaofeng, the Deputy Sect Master for the Twin Mountains sect in charge of the Alchemy Peak. If you are new to the sect and this is your first time at one of these competitions, I welcome you." There was a subdued, polite applause at these words, but it was quickly cut off. The Inner Sect Challenge is held once every 3 years. Every Outer Sect disciple who has reached the realm of Martial Grandmaster has been invited to participate. Unlike the competition to become an Outer Sect member, there is no set number for how many may be promoted to the Inner Sect. Instead, our panel of esteemed elders will decide who would be a good fit for the Inner Sect. This is done on an individual basis, so each competitor only needs to worry about doing their best. While the Sect Master's words indicated the participants weren't competing against each other, there was no way that was true. If promotion were only about individual merit, there would be no reason for such an open competition. No, I was sure the disciples' relative performances would be taken into account. It would be difficult for the people at the bottom of the pack to advance no matter how well they did. The sect master, unaware of my inner monologue, turned to the competitors and continued his speech. "For this competition, you will all be making 3 pills. We will start with the most straightforward, a fire-focused Meridian Builder pill. This pill should be familiar to everyone, so I hope you will use it to show off the true height of your abilities." I watched as the alchemists on the arena floor turned to their workbenches and inspected their ingredients. As I had rarely interacted with the other disciples in the sect, almost no one down there was familiar to me, but there was one person I recognized. Located in the middle of the front row was the young man I had competed against in the pill hall, One Hao. I was looking forward to seeing how he could make such high-efficacy pills. For the most part, the process the other disciples used to concoct pills mirrored my own efforts. After melting and purifying the herbs, they used the pill empowerment technique to enhance the medicinal power of their creations. There were only minuscule differences in the skill levels of the various disciples, and it was clear that everyone here was an expert with Meridian Builder pills. The only outlier was One Hao. As he worked, streams of energy flowed into his pill furnace. I had never seen anything like it before. While the empowerment technique used personal chi to fortify a pill, he was pulling energy straight from the air and infusing it into his herbs. This had to be the effect of his blessing, but I couldn't even begin to understand what it was doing. After everyone was finished, their pills were collected and taken away to be judged. The results were not immediately announced, and I couldn't accurately estimate the potency of pills from so far away, so it was hard to know who was doing well and who was failing. However, since I didn't see many notable differences in the concoction processes of the various competitors, I guessed that everyone was roughly equal at this stage, except for Wen Hao, of course. Once the judging was complete, Sect Master Tan Gaofeng stood and walked to the front of his podium once more. Next, you will all need to make a water-focused Meridian Builder pill. Everyone has a natural advantage when making the fire version, but this one should stretch your abilities slightly more. Everyone turned to their workbenches once more, but this time, no one was able to use the empowerment technique to enhance their pill's efficacy. They would all be limited to the base maximum efficacy of 100%, except for Wen Hao. Once more, the blessed alchemist pulled energy from the surrounding environment and infused it into his pill, raising it beyond the level that anyone else could even hope to match. My eyes were so focused on Wen Hao's process that I barely noticed when the young woman next to him began acting strange. Instead of working on her pill, she called a deacon over and asked him a question. After listening to her request, the deacon approached the sect master and then went off to an area under the stadium. Shortly after, he returned and handed an additional herb to the female disciple. Looking at it, I could see that it had some form of water-attributed medicinal energy, but I was unfamiliar with its exact effect. It appeared that she was going to add an extra herb to the beginning of the ingredient chain to boost the pill's efficacy. This wasn't impossible, but randomly adding an herb could have disastrous effects on the medicinal properties of the final pill, and finding a suitable sixth ingredient for this pill would be incredibly difficult. To my surprise, she did not add this additional pill directly into the pill furnace. Instead, she used a technique to forcibly rip the medicinal energy out of the herb. In doing so, the energy lost its structure, which in turn caused it to lose all its medicinal properties. She was left with pure, wild water energy. She then infused this water energy into the wood-based herb and began concocting her pill. I had never even heard of such a process before. Doing this would require an extremely high water affinity, some type of blessing, or possibly both. If this were possible with only a high affinity, it should be a common technique for use with fire herbs since every alchemist had a high fire affinity. After considering this for a moment, I realized why I may have never run into this technique before. There was no reason to use it unless you had an extremely high affinity for a chi type you weren't cultivating. I was already using fire chi to boost the efficacy of my pills. Using medicinal energy ripped from an herb instead would just be wasteful. The second round quickly ended, and I was sure that Wen Hao and this girl had outperformed every other disciple present. They were all good, but no one else had shown anything special. With the difficulty I had in entering the outer sect, I was worried about my prospects for entering the inner sect, but my skills were not much different from the average competitor. Only Wen Hao and the young woman had shown skills I couldn't currently compete against. Once the judging for the second round was complete, Sect Master Tan made his way to the front of his podium once more. The final pill for today will be a rank 2 health rejuvenation pill. Rejuvenation pills were not popular since they slowly healed injuries over an extended period. The overall effect was better than pills that healed wounds instantly, but they were only useful when a person was injured enough to require a pill to help them heal while not injured to the point of needing instant healing. Deacon Liu had me make a few of them over the years, but they were among the least requested. These pills only required 3 herbs. One with metal energy, one with water, and one with wood. This formed a constructive sequence to empower the final wood-based healing effects. At this point, several of the competitors must have been feeling uneasy. Only 2 people so far had stood out, and this would be their last chance to do so. Except for Wen Hao, no one had a way to boost the effectiveness of this final pill. Even the girl from before didn't use any fancy techniques and started concocting the pill in a conventional manner. However, around half of the contestants decided to push their limits. They began the concoction process by infusing the metal-based herb with the cold mountain fire. They lacked the finesse required by the empowerment technique, and rashly infusing an herb with one spirit fire would lead to heartache more times than not, but this rough application of energy at least gave them a chance to make something exceptional. I watched as one pill after another began to collapse. Nearly everyone who tried to use their spirit fire to enhance their pill failed immediately. Of the dozen who made the attempt, only 2 succeeded. I didn't know how powerful their final pill would be, but the smiles on their faces showed they believed it would be enough. When the final pill was removed from the pill furnace and placed in a pill bottle, the sect master stood once more. Congratulations on completing the inner sect challenge. Please wait while the elders discuss your results. To me, It seemed clear that Wen Hao and the female disciple who had been able to control the water herb were going to be selected. Aside from them, only the two who had enhanced their pills with spirit fire stood out. Everyone else, excluding those who failed the third pill, seemed to make pills of roughly the same quality, so it would be hard to promote anyone from that group over the others. The discussion between the three elders on the judging panel lasted far longer than I expected. It was only after what looked to be a rather heated disagreement that one of the elders stepped forward to announce the results. Deputy Sect Master Tan, we have reached our decision. At this announcement, a few whispers broke out in the crowd. It was improper and slightly disrespectful for the elder to specifically call out Tan Gaofeng as the Deputy Sect Master. Normally, he should simply be referred to as Sect Master Tan. The elders have decided to promote disciples Wen Hao, Mu Qingfei, and Du Ranhou. Congratulations to you all. After speaking, he turned away and walked out of the stadium. Mu Qingfei was the girl who used the water herb earlier, so it made sense that she was promoted. Du Ranhou, however, was one of the many people who only concocted normal pills. Neither of the two disciples who enhanced their pills with spirit fire were chosen for advancement. This choice seemed strange. Even if his pills were the best of the normal pills, why him over the two who had done something special? This could be a result of the factionalism I had observed in the past. 3 elders were acting as judges, and I had identified 3 factions. The elder who announced the results seemed to be unhappy with Sect Master Tan. Could this be the reason? Was Du Ranhou a member of the Sect Master's faction and opposed to this elder? I couldn't be sure, but it seemed likely. Still, selecting a single inner sect disciple shouldn't have been enough for him to breach public decorum. There had to be more going on beneath the surface. Of course, it could also be that the elders in charge felt that the disciples who had enhanced their pills with spirit fires were simply lucky. They had taken a risk, and it paid off, but that didn't mean it had been the right thing to do. The elders might prefer disciples who follow the safe, traditional route to success. Was this a plot between factions? Was this just the elders choosing who they felt was the best alchemist? I couldn't know. The results of this competition reminded me of the need to learn more about the undercurrents that were swirling around me. I could ask Deacon Lu about why the elders made the decisions they made, but even a completely honest response would only tell me his opinion, not the reality of the situation. If I wanted to know more, I would need to become more involved in the world around me. I watched as those who weren't chosen for advancement slowly filed out of the stadium. Their dejection was obvious from their slumped shoulders and the looks on their faces. Very few of those who failed would remain outer sect disciples. As martial grandmasters, they would be encouraged to transition to deacons of the nominal disciples. Some might persist and attempt this challenge again in 3 years, but with the way the sect operated, it was unlikely they would be any more successful on the second attempt. After the inner sect challenge ended, I returned to the elders' enclave to talk with Deacon Lu. I needed more knowledge of the sect, and I wasn't getting it by trapping myself in Elder Mu's enclave. Deacon, I want to spend more time making pills for the sect in the village. I want to try to better understand my place here. Deacon Lu froze for the slightest moment and then scanned me from head to toe while he thought through the situation. I see. This might be a good use of your time, but I hope you won't stop working with the elder during this period. My response was instantaneous. Of course not. The deacon's help and the elder's library had been the greatest boons I had received in this life, and I was sure that if I maintained this relationship, I would gain access to rank 3 manuals after reaching Grandmaster. My current mental library couldn't hold rank 3 techniques, but I could still do my best to memorize the most important ones, and hopefully, I could create a copy of a rank 3 cultivation technique that was small enough to fit in my storage space. Not only would working with Elder Mu continue to benefit me greatly, but I also felt indebted to him for everything he had provided. Yes, I might have been able to reach this level on my own eventually, but it was the Elder's guidance that encouraged me to spend points temporarily boosting my affinity, the Elder's book that helped me learn to control my spirit fire, and the Elder's library that provided me with an abundance of new cultivation and alchemy techniques. While I might have been able to achieve all this without his assistance eventually, the fact was that I didn't. He provided me with the means to push myself forward in this life, and the benefits from that assistance would continue for many lives to come. If practicing my alchemy would serve as a down payment on the debt I owed, I was more than willing to do my part. Deacon, how many pills can an average martial master 4 create in a day? It will vary a little, but you can expect the average master to be able to make 1 per level of cultivation, so a martial master 4 would be able to create 3 or 4 pills a day. I nodded. Then I can plan to make 4 per day for the sect. That will leave me with a significant amount of free time which I can spend concocting pills for Elder Mu. Just give me a week or two's worth of ingredients at a time, and I'll make them in my spare time. If possible, you could have a servant drop them off for me in the village. The deacon rubbed his chin in thought. That should be acceptable. It will cut down on the pills you can help us with, but you will still be contributing more than most of our disciples. As Deacon Lu was speaking, an idea seemed to occur to him. You should also know that the elder has emphasized the importance of your entrance into the inner sect. Ascending to Grandmaster and joining the inner sect will allow you to learn to make rank 3 pills. Given the rate at which you can concoct pills, getting you trained up to make rank 3 pills might let us reach our goals much sooner. Going out and making a name for yourself by doing work in the pill hall will make it easier for us to get that promotion. Is there a way I can begin working through the pill hall without risking another incident? I would like to get my bearings before being confronted by another unusually gifted alchemist.
Deacon Lu winced.
Yes, that would probably be for the best. Just focus on the sect's bounties. There are always a few types of pills in high demand, and the sect will buy as many as you can make at 100% of their normal value. If a pill isn't on the bounty list, you will receive significantly less when selling directly to the sect, so make sure to only focus on what's on the list. Just go to the pill hall, buy the ingredients, make the pills, and turn them in. No one will complain about you completing the standard bounties. After a few parting words with the deacon, I left and made my way to the village. I entered the pill hall once more and looked around. It wasn't too different from my first visit. Various bulletin boards had missions posted to them, and several disciples were browsing through the available assignments. It took me a few moments of searching, but I finally found the board where the sect's bounties had been posted. The types of pills listed were all basic, but it was easy to understand why they were on the list. Rank 1 healing pills, Rank 1 Chi gathering pills, Rank 2 healing pills, Rank 2 meridian builder pills, Fire Earth, Rank 3 healing pills, Rank 3 Chi gathering pills, Fire Earth. These were the most common healing and cultivation pills. Likely, these were also the pills that cultivators on the Martial Peak needed the most. Additionally, these were almost certainly the pills that were easiest to sell to forces outside the sect. The only real surprise was that this list included Rank 1 pills. Those should mostly be handled by the nominal disciples, and these bounties were only available to outer and inner sect disciples. Once I remembered that some outer sect members weren't granted spirit fires on their advancement, I realized that these bounties were intended for them. After considering my options, I decided to start by making a large quantity of meridian builder pills until I was more familiar with the pill hall system. Purchasing the necessary herbs from the receptionist went smoothly, and no one tried to bar my path. I was free to leave, but I didn't exit the hall immediately. Instead, I slowly perused the posted missions. I had no interest in accepting any of them. My goal was to simply wait and observe the interactions between the various disciples. After about 20 minutes, however, nothing of note had happened, so I gave up on the fruitless task. If situations like what happened between me and Wan Hao were common, I would have plenty of chances to observe them in the future. There was no reason to rush it. For each pill I made, I earned roughly 100 contribution points after deducting the cost of materials. These contribution points could be used to buy various resources and time with mentors, but thanks to my position under Elder Mu, I didn't need to purchase either of these. Instead, I used all the points I earned in the sect's technique hall. The sheer number of techniques available there was far greater than what was contained within the Elder's library, but the overall quality of these techniques was slightly inferior. It held only a single low-profound cultivation technique for fire chi that provided all the benefits of a standard peak yellow technique while also slightly increasing the density of the user's chi. While the Elder also had a technique for improving chi density, this one did so in a unique way. It didn't increase the power of chi. Instead, it was more like a way to increase a cultivator's chi capacity, letting them use more energy for longer periods. The cheapest manual in the technique hall was a rank 1 low yellow alchemy technique for only 100 contribution points. The most expensive one was a rank 2 profound rank fighting manual for 500,000. At the rate I was currently earning points, I would need years to earn enough to purchase this technique, and that was the point. People weren't supposed to buy it. The sect made fighting techniques available, but they put up as many roadblocks as possible to stop disciples from buying them. This was annoying, but if the techniques were available, I would eventually get my hands on them. It was only a matter of time. After looking through the available techniques, nothing seemed to be of immediate importance to me, so I didn't worry too much about what I bought. I just purchased the cheapest techniques available that I didn't already have a copy of in my library. My goal was to slowly copy down the entire collection, so it didn't matter where I started. I wanted to get my hands on that profound rank fighting technique, but I was in no rush. It was too far out of my price range, and I wasn't completely convinced it was truly worth the price. At this point, I wouldn't have been surprised if the sect were selling a defective technique at an extortionate rate to anyone who decided they wanted to learn to fight. My time in the technique hall proved to me that quality techniques were expensive. However, as time passed, my mental library would slowly expand, and I would own them all. For the next couple of weeks, I maintained a steady rhythm of purchasing a large number of ingredients, concocting pills, and returning to the pill hall to sell them, but I never saw any altercations break out. Had my experience been so out of the ordinary? Was choosing a mission that had already been picked by another disciple uncommon, or was it just rare to be berated for it? As it turned out, the answer was that I was just too impatient. Spending only 20 to 30 minutes in the place for a few days over the course of a couple of weeks wasn't enough time to see the drama unfold. On the third week of my routine, I finally saw what I had been waiting for. The moment a small young man reached up and tore a tab from a mission, and a burly older disciple jumped in front of him. Both were wearing the robes of outer sect disciples. The burly man's nostrils flared, and he spoke loud enough to quiet the entire pill hall. "What do you think you're doing? This mission has already been claimed by me, Tao Gufei. No one else is needed." The young man gave the brute a slight frown. "Arrogant and arrogant. Your father doesn't need any help deciding which missions he will take." After saying this, the young man pushed past the burly man and walked straight toward the counter, but the burly man jumped in front of him once more, blocking his path. The brute looked at the young man with a snarl. "A frog at the bottom of a well, let me teach you a lesson in place of your parents." The young man looked up at him. "A good dog doesn't block the way. You dare." It looked like the large man was about to take a swing at the younger guy, but at that instant, the deacon who had been silently watching from the sidelines finally spoke up. "Gufei." The hulking man looked at the deacon with hatred for a moment before turning back to the young man. "Do you dare to make a bet? If I defeat you in this mission, kneel down and call me grandfather." The smaller man just smirked. "And if you lose?" "I won't lose. Same rules." "If you lose, kneel down to your grandfather." The burly man gritted his teeth. "Fine." I watched the entire exchange, a bit shocked. The way the burly man acted was almost exactly the same as how that girl had acted. Was it a coincidence, or was this some kind of strange ritual? If it was a ritual, what was the point? Both participants were putting their entire reputations on the line here. This couldn't just be about someone being annoyed at someone else's mission selection. To understand the situation better, I needed to see how it ended. I carefully monitored the pill hall over the next few days. I had to see how this drama was supposed to play out. On the third day, the burly man entered the pill hall early in the day and turned in his pills. After that, he stood around and talked to anyone who would listen. That coward doesn't dare to show his face around here. He's already abandoned the mission and run away. I want to see how the sect punishes him for treating missions in the pill hall as games. About an hour after he arrived, he started berating the receptionist. "Call the mission already. That fool is too late. It's clear he isn't coming." This behavior continued for a long while before the shorter man finally entered. He walked right up to the counter and turned in his pills. The burly man continued to boast about his inevitable victory, but eventually, the victor was called. The younger man had won. Once the younger man's victory was announced, the burly man began trying to sneak away, but he was blocked by a group of disciples led by the younger man. "Running away? Are you even a man? Kneel before your grandfather. How dare you? Do you know who I am? I am Tao Gufei, disciple of Elder Tang." "So, disciples of Elder Tang don't honor their word? You?" With a face filled with rage, the burly man knelt and growled his response. "Grandfather." The younger man snorted and turned away. "I don't have a grandson as unfilial as you." I could only watch in shock as the drama unfolded before me. Was this what Deacon Liu had expected me to do? While the emotions of both men seemed genuine, the entire performance was more like a play than an actual argument. I tried to take everything I had seen and knew and put it all together into a framework that could make sense of this situation. I thought back to what Deacon Liu had told me. It was common for disciples who rushed their cultivation to become overly aggressive. Was this entire sequence a script the sect had created and taught to the disciples as a way for them to let out their pent-up aggression? Did it give them a way to flex these impulses without causing any real damage? Giving the disciples an actual script and telling them to recite it would be meaningless, but in the city, the sect sold novels for people to read for enjoyment. Was this how arguments were resolved in them? Were those novels intended as guides for how to act in the outer sect? One important piece of data stuck out to me. In all my observations, I hadn't noticed anyone besides these two reach for a competitive mission. Was this interaction just the expected result of choosing one? When someone chose a competitive mission, was another disciple expected to throw down the gauntlet in this exact manner? If this was the script for when the first person agreed to the contest, was there also a way to concede early? If my speculations were all true, why hadn't Deacon Liu told me about it? Shouldn't he have prepared me to deal with this situation? Was it all just a test to see what fate had in store for me? I couldn't help but wonder at Elder Mu's and Deacon Lu's true motives. They had been of immense help in my study of alchemy, but they had done nothing to prepare me for interacting with the other disciples in the sect. Was there a reason for this, or was it simply a lack of foresight on their part? Unfortunately, I had no way to find out. Only time would provide me with the answers I sought. For the next several months, I followed a set routine. Concoct pills from the bounty list for the sect, use my spare time to make a considerable number of extra pills for Elder Mu, observe the other disciples in the sect, and cultivate enough to advance one stage each year. A few months into this regime, I broke through to Martial Master 5. When I did, I felt my mental state shift once more. The pathways I had initially begun to feel when I reached Martial Master 4 had become stronger, and my thoughts flowed along them more naturally, but I was still in complete control of the situation. If I wanted to, I could cut them off, but I allowed myself to use these new thought patterns to try and develop new perspectives. This led me down the path of wondering about Deacon Lu's motives. Ever since I failed in my competition with Wen Hao, Deacon Lu had seemed different, more distant. I couldn't help but think that he felt my karmic fate was insufficient and that this feeling had irreparably changed his attitude toward me. Was he still worried about what was in my best interest, or was he now only concerned with extracting as much value out of me as possible? The strategy Deacon Lu had laid out for me was to ascend one step every year until I reached Martial Grandmaster. That would mean I would reach Martial Master Peak at age 35, and I would have a maximum of 5 years to learn how to break through to Martial Grandmaster. Was 5 years enough time? It should be, but I had never attempted that breakthrough before and knew nothing about it. Should I be giving myself more time? Also, Elder Mu had stressed the importance of breaking through to Grandmaster before reaching 30, but by following the Deacon's guidance, I would only be Martial Master 7 at that point. Was that acceptable? Even if it meant my mental state was slightly unstable, achieving the Elder's goal of Grandmaster by 30 should be a priority, shouldn't it? Was Deacon Lu simply ignoring the desires of Elder Mu? I cut off those thoughts and tried to return to my more natural thought patterns. I felt a slight resistance when doing so, but I quickly got myself under control. There was a good reason to delay my cultivation and only advance once a year. I had agreed with the Deacon when he proposed it. Rushing could easily lead to a weak foundation and a poor mental state. On the other hand, I was privy to information the Deacon didn't have. Even if he wasn't intentionally sabotaging me, that didn't mean his advice was correct in my situation. I had been cultivating as a martial master for several decades, and I had constructed dozens of meridians. Even if I continuously raised my cultivation base all the way to peak master, I shouldn't have to worry too much about creating a weak foundation. I knew how to create meridians well enough to push forward confidently. Also, my goal wasn't to reach peak master within a year. I only needed to reach it by the time I turned 30. That would only require raising my level 2 or 3 times a year. Additionally, my soul had become much stronger over the past few decades. I could easily handle mental pressure that would cripple most of the other disciples. If I was careful and assessed my mental state after each advancement, I should be able to cultivate more quickly than Deacon Lu believed possible for a regular disciple. Was it worth it to push for Grandmaster before 30? Maybe not. From what Elder Mu had told me, there wasn't too much to be gained by doing so. However, the real gains I needed weren't sect points or system credits. What I needed was information. I needed to learn more about cultivation, and I needed to learn more about what was possible. Was it worth testing myself to see what my actual limits were? It should be, as long as I was careful. Martial Master Peak by May 30th had been a dream of Golden Millet, but that would be my goal. To accomplish it, I needed to advance 3 steps every year, so that was what I changed my cultivation pace to. After 4 months, I advanced to Martial Master 6. After 8, I reached Martial Master 7, and a year after I began this push, I ascended to Martial Master 8. The entire time I was cultivating, I paid close attention to my chi and ensured that my meridians were as perfect as possible. After each advancement, I did my best to perform a mental balance test to ensure I remained mentally stable. Martial Master 8 was halfway to the goal, and after 1 more year of this schedule, I would reach Peak Master. I could have continued this push, but I held back. I wanted to spend time at Martial Master 8, explore the power of my new cultivation base, and examine my mental state. The main reason for this was that after my most recent advancement, I began to feel a powerful mental strain. My thoughts wanted to fall into the patterns created by my cultivation technique. I could still control it, but doing so had begun to require effort. Having decided to take a break from cultivation, I decided to visit the Pill Hall. Over the past couple of years, I had started using it as a resting spot of sorts, and I wasn't the only one. Several disciples came here to spend time chatting with friends. Unlike in the nominal disciple city, there wasn't much to do for entertainment on the mountain, and since we were all alchemists, the pill hall became a natural gathering spot. When I walked in, I saw someone I was hoping to see. Senior Sister Jiao. How are you doing today? Senior Sister Jiao, or Jiao Xinyan, was an older inner sect disciple I had met my first year completing missions in the pill hall. She had been in the sect long enough to learn a lot about its inner workings, and she was one of the best fonts of information available to me. She spent a lot of time hanging out, talking to other disciples, and just watching people work. Since she was in the inner sect, she had access to gossip from the Marshall Peak, and she shared it freely. Junior Brother Su, nice to see you. Have you eaten yet? No, I just took a break and came to visit. Has anything interesting happened? She sighed and shook her head. It's been quiet all day. The deacon posted a few new competitive missions, so I was hoping for some entertainment, but no one has been willing to step forward and sign up for them. Oh? Anything special? One is rank 3, so it's only for the inner sect, and those always take more time. The other is for the self-proclaimed genius of the Marshall Peak. Some guy named Tianhua. He's a tiger, so there aren't too many people fighting to take his contract. The Tigers were one of the factions I had noticed in the past. They were led by Elder Hu and were mainly composed of disciples from wealthier families around the wastes, though the Su clan was notably absent from their ranks. Of course, that wasn't a surprise since no official members of the Su clan ever joined the sect. The Tigers were the smallest of the 3 factions, and they didn't have a particularly good relationship with the other 2. They tended to see themselves as half-noble and above the common sect members. This attitude led to fewer people being willing to step forward and help them, so it was mainly their secular wealth and influence that sustained them. Those things couldn't be felt in the lower rungs of the sect, but they seemed more important at higher levels. My mind returned to what Jiao had said. Tianhua. I think that's the guy I was making pills for when I was challenged by Wen Hao a while back. She bobbed her head. Makes sense. Brother One is a tiger too, so I doubt he was keen on letting money leave the family. He wouldn't want a non-tiger to complete such a lucrative mission. But why did you call Tianhua a self-proclaimed genius? Is he not very talented? Jiao laughed. No, he's got talent. But when he joined the sect, he kept talking about how he was the #1 disciple. To be fair, he wasn't too wrong. From what I hear, he has an incredibly powerful blessing that can turn a large area into a fiery hellscape. He just isn't good at cultivation, so he's taking a long time to advance. He also burns through resources like crazy. Cultivating like that is expensive, but for him, the Tigers are willing to pay the price. As we talked about Tianhua, my cultivation technique suspicion circuits started tingling. I allowed my thoughts to travel down those paths, and I tried to understand what my mind was telling me. Hazy memories began to flit through my thoughts. A long time ago, I encountered someone who called himself Tian Lei. That name meant heavenly lightning, and the very first time I entered the sect, someone launched a powerful lightning attack around the fighter's gate. Next, I encountered Tian Bing. He looked exactly like Tian Lei, his name meant heavenly ice, and he attacked me with a powerful ice attack. Now there was Tianhua. When I entered the sect in this life, there was no lightning attack in front of the fighter's gate. It was a fire attack, and Tianhua meant heavenly fire. Were these all the same person? Did his blessing keep changing? If he was given an unusually powerful fire blessing, I could understand why he might name himself Tianhua, but why did his blessing change to fire? Was Jiao's information accurate? Maybe she was trying to trick me. When I had that thought, I forcibly yanked my mind away from the suspicion pathways. I looked at Jiao. I couldn't trust everything she told me since she would have her own agenda, but it would be silly to lie about public knowledge. But why was I even questioning Jiao's trustworthiness? She had shared a lot of information with me over the years, and I never knew it to be wrong. She might have her reasons for sharing it, and I could consider why she would do so, but the information should be true. I stopped myself again. I felt my mind. The suspicion circuits were not engaged, so why did I keep drifting to that train of thought? I considered a worrying possibility. Senior sister. I want to test something. Can you tell me a few things about a random disciple? Huh? Okay. How about Wang Shan? Do you know him? He entered the outer sect as part of the Snakes during the last competition. He didn't do too well as a nominal disciple, but he was able to do enough to help the Snakes win a few of those competitions in the city. They probably felt he should be given a shot, so they got him promoted to the outer sect, but he didn't get a spirit fire. Right now he's doing some hard work in the pill hall to try and earn a shot at getting one, but it doesn't look too promising. I thought about what Jiao told me for a few moments, and then I took out a notebook and started writing my thoughts. The Snakes is a faction focused on personal improvement. Their core motivation is to find ways to push forward and ascend further. They want to help anyone who seems capable and is driven to improve. Based on the snakes recruiting him, Wang Shun sounds like a traditional example of someone who is not too talented but is willing to work hard. Even though he might not be the best cultivator or alchemist, he fought for prizes in the competitions and is still fighting to try to become a master alchemist. After I noted this down, I flipped on my suspicion circuits and considered the situation again. I thought about why he was recruited, and what more could be at play. After a few moments of thinking, I jerked my thoughts away from that line of reasoning and disabled those pathways once more. I gave myself a few moments to relax, then I turned the notebook to a new page and wrote down my thoughts. Wang Shun seems to be a hidden factor for the snakes. He successfully hid himself in the city and only appeared when he was needed to secure a victory. Likely, he already has a spirit flame and is hiding it so other factions will remain unaware. If he appears to challenge me or is part of my inner sect challenge, I need to be extremely careful. After writing that down, I flipped back and reread my original note. It seemed extremely naive. There was no chance that Wang Shun was just some regular hardworking disciple. He was definitely a hidden dragon. While I was writing, Jiao gave me a strange look, but she didn't stop me or ask what I was doing. After I finished, I looked back up at her. Hey, thanks for the help. I need to get back to my room. I thought hard about Wang Shun, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was a hidden trump card for the snakes. But why did I think that? I looked back at what I wrote after Jiao told me about him, and nothing even hinted at this possibility. This told me something important about how the cultivation technique was affecting me. I had noticed before that with the rank 1 technique, when I was made more susceptible to suggestion, those suggestions still carried weight in my mind and informed my decisions even after I died and reset. The altered perceptions of my memories lingered even after the direct effects of the cultivation technique were removed. The same thing seemed to hold true with these suspicions. If my mind determined that someone or something was suspicious while I was allowing myself to be influenced, the belief that they were suspicious would remain even after I removed the influence. I wasn't sure if this was good or bad. Wang Shun could indeed be a plant for the snakes, and all my new suspicions could be true. Either way, I needed to be exceedingly careful about allowing myself to fall into that suspicious mindset. After learning about the potential permanent side effects of my cultivation technique, I knew that I needed to be much more careful. Allowing myself to fall into a paranoid mindset and corrupting my memories of the sect would do inestimable damage to this and countless future lives. To prevent that, I needed to ensure I was always in complete control of the cultivation technique's mental effects. The mental pull from my newly established mental pathways was strong, and if I continued advancing, those pathways might take over my entire psyche. I needed to give myself time to let them settle. After juggling some numbers in my mind, I decided to go back to the once-a-year approach to advancement. 1 year should be long enough for my mind to settle down and return to normal. Then I would advance. I still need to be careful though. Each advancement had a compounding effect on this mental pulling, making the strain from each new stage of cultivation significantly worse. If this mental strain hadn't completely settled, a single advancement might be able to directly carry me over the edge of madness. I was in a dangerous situation, but as long as I was cautious, I would be able to make it through safely. I just needed to slow down and take my time. After each advancement, I secluded myself in my rented apartment and didn't talk to anyone. This allowed me to stabilize my mind without having to worry about a random conversation accidentally engaging the cultivation technique's suspicion circuits. During this time, I never returned to my cave in the Elders' Enclave on the mountain. Renting an apartment cost me 100 contribution points a day, which was roughly equal to the profits I made from selling a single pill. My estimates put that at a cost of 50 gold a day to rent this room, a completely insane price. However, I didn't care too much about contribution points. They were easy enough to earn, and I would much rather live in a well-furnished apartment than return to the Elders' Enclave and live in a cave of bare rock. I spent years in the city slowly raising my cultivation level to Martial Master Peak. In all that time, I never saw Deacon Liu, and I never received any messages from Elder Mu. My only contact with them was through a servant disciple who continuously delivered herbs and picked up my completed pills. As long as I provided them with a dozen or so pills every day, they were content to let me live however I wanted to. They got countless free pills, and I received unlimited resources to practice with. They made more immediate profit from the exchange, but I was the only one who would get to keep my gains. In a way, it was a win-win, but personally, I felt that I was the one coming out ahead in the deal. This status quo lasted years, but eventually, I completed my final meridian and advanced to Martial Master Peak. It was time for me to ascend to Grandmaster and join the inner sect. After breaking through, I spent a few months completely stabilizing my cultivation. Once I was confident my mental state was stable, I returned to the Elders' Enclave to talk with Deacon Lu. I bowed slightly when I saw him. "Deacon, long time no see." He blinked in surprise at me. "Little Fong, what brings you back?" I broke through to Martial Master Peak. "I need to learn how to advance further." A mask of false calm suddenly appeared on the deacon's face. "I see. That was quicker than expected. I hope you didn't rush your cultivation." "No, Deacon. I was careful." "I believe my foundation is solid." "Very well. I will send a message to Elder Mu. You will need to discuss your advancement with him directly. Just wait in your room for now, and I will get you when he's ready." I spent 3 days in my cave as I waited to meet with Elder Mu. Those few days drove home how different my life had been over these past few years. I had started to become used to living in a decent room and having regular interactions with people. Returning to the ascetic life was uncomfortable. Still, it was familiar. The deacon continued to provide me herbs to work with, and I was able to continue slowly refining my alchemy skills. Even after all these years, I didn't feel that I had truly perfected rank 2 alchemy. I had nearly reached the limit of what was possible with my knowledge and affinities, but I still wanted to keep pushing to improve even the slightest bit more. Returning to this simple lifestyle resonated with a small piece of my soul, and I was able to refocus on what was important. My concentration on this task consumed me, and days passed. I didn't even realize how long it had been until Deacon Lu interrupted me. "Disciple Fong, it's time. Follow me." As we walked, Deacon Lu felt distant, almost like I was a stranger to him. I wasn't sure what had happened, but I could tell something had changed with him. When we entered the elder's office, I was shocked by its emptiness. The countless scrolls and papers that had littered the room were gone. The bookshelves that lined the room stood completely empty. Only a single scroll was left. It had been placed on a small silver tray that sat on top of the elder's desk. After ushering me inside, the deacon closed the door, leaving me alone in the room with Elder Mu. The elder gestured to the chair across from him. "Take a seat." I sat down and waited patiently as he examined me. He was using his chi vision to look at my energy body. That allowed him to closely examine my cultivation state and check for any problems. After talking with Zhao a while back, she taught me the basics of doing this, and it was how people had been able to tell what my cultivation realm was in the past. I wasn't sure what the elder could see with his soul power, but mine allowed me to have a detailed view of a person's meridians. This let me see and understand all the tiny imperfections in them. After over a minute of careful examination, Elder Mu pronounced his judgment. "Better than I expected. How do you assess your mental state?" I bowed my head. "Elder, the last time I advanced, the new impulses were difficult to control. However, after 2 months in seclusion, I do not believe they pose any risk to my stability." He paused briefly to consider. "What if the sensations were 10 or 100 times more powerful? Do you think you could keep them under control?" I hesitated. "I don't think so. Even doubling the intensity might be a risk." He let out a soft sigh. "Yes, Deacon Lu has failed you in this. He was supposed to keep you balanced so that this wouldn't be a problem. Elder, I must accept blame for this. My doubts caused me to briefly rush my cultivation a few years ago. I cannot blame Deacon Lu for this. It wasn't my place to contradict the elder, so this was slightly improper of me to say, but I couldn't throw the deacon under the bus here. Even if I still harbored doubts about the man's motives, I would accept personal responsibility for my actions." Elder Mu waved my objection away. "It makes no difference. What's done is done. We have to work with what we have." The elder tapped the scroll that had been sitting on his desk. "This is your rank 3 cultivation technique. It is peak yellow and is a match with the ones used previously. Use it to raise your cultivation base to Grandmaster. If you need advice, contact Deacon Chun in the administration office. He will assist you." I hesitated before taking the scroll. What are the mental effects of this technique? Rank 3 techniques are a bit simpler than those that come before it. There are only 2 basic effects, and nearly every technique has one of the 2. They can either increase or decrease the effects of the previous techniques you used. This one decreases the effects, so you should have no problems controlling yourself after cultivating it. I suddenly felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. That's great. I can finally stop worrying so much. No, it isn't. Techniques that decrease the effects of previous ranks don't just affect the mental component. They also result in significantly reduced total power. By cultivating this technique, your chi will be crippled compared to someone who cultivates an empowering technique. So, should I wait and cultivate the more powerful technique? Elder Mu shook his head and looked down at his desk, not wanting to meet my eye. There isn't time. You only have a limited window to break through, and I do not believe you can reach a stable enough state in time. However, even if you could, it wouldn't matter, and it wouldn't be worth the effort anyway. Yes, by following this technique, your chi will be weaker than others, but for you, that won't be much of a problem. With your fire seed, the strength of your chi is much less important. I understand, Elder. I had already questioned him twice during this conversation, and it would be poor form to press further. This was the technique he was giving me, so I would have to accept it. The next Intersect Challenge will take place in 1 year. You will need to advance to Martial Grandmaster before that time. As long as you do, I am confident that I can secure your promotion to the Intersect so that you will be allowed to begin learning Rank 3 alchemy. Yes, Elder. With that, I left. The need to intentionally weaken myself left me feeling dissatisfied, but I knew that I should accept Elder Mu's decision. I didn't return to my cave in the Enclave. Instead, I went back to my rented room in the village since it provided a much more comfortable environment to cultivate in. Once I was seated and was able to calm my thoughts, I looked at the scroll the Elder had given me. The way he had described this technique had left me disappointed. A cultivation technique specifically designed to make me weaker than others at my same level wasn't what I had been hoping for. I wanted something better. Was this really the only technique suitable for me? Could I try pledging myself to a different elder in exchange for something better? Maybe, but whether I succeeded or not, doing so would completely burn my bridges with Elder Mu, and it was extremely likely I would just be turned away. Also, even if this technique wasn't what I had been hoping for, Elder Mu was still providing me with a pathway beyond anything I had accomplished before. This only added to the debt I owed him. I couldn't betray him. Thinking about the technique, I considered if Elder Mu might not be correct in his decision. Assuming everything he told me was true, having less strength wouldn't be all that bad. I wouldn't have to worry about the mental effects of cultivation anymore and should still be able to learn Rank 3 alchemy. The mental effects of the Rank 2 technique had started to be a slight problem, and if a strengthening technique made these effects 10 or 100 times more potent, I could be in serious danger. A weakening effect could be considered a blessing. If everything the Elder said was true, I would use this technique. I just needed to know if I could trust him. Knowing I needed a second opinion, I visited the pill hall to find the only person who might qualify as an outside expert. Senior Sister Jiao, can you help me with something? I had come to learn that Jiao was not simply hanging around the pill hall for fun. She was there to keep an eye on things. This was because she was a member of the faction I had dubbed the Eyes. This was the sect master's personal faction, and its members were his eyes and ears in the sect. While Elder Mu was an independent, he was most closely aligned with the snakes. This put Jiao slightly at odds with him. By relying on this adversarial relationship between the two groups, I hoped to use Jiao as an independent check on the information I got from the Elder. She smiled when she heard this. Younger brother Su, what do you need? Elder Mu gave me a new cultivation technique today. I was hoping you could take a look at it and tell me what you think. Oh. Her eyes widened in surprise. You reached Martial Master Peak. Congratulations. Here, let me see. I handed her the technique. When she opened it up and read it, I noticed her wince slightly. After only a glance, she gave it back to me with a look of pity. Yeah, that one's pretty standard. Sorry about that. I know you've been working hard, but well, it happens. What do you mean? She sucked in a breath through her teeth as she thought through her words. If you cultivate that technique, your future will be limited. You will never be able to grow much beyond where you are now. Even if you reach peak Grandmaster, you will be weaker than a Martial Grandmaster 2 that used a more powerful technique. Is that the only downside? She let out a soft, wry laugh. Isn't that enough? I've never heard of any other problems, but being weaker than every other Grandmaster is already too much. She closed her eyes and shook her head slightly. Anyway, it's what you got. Once an elder decides something, it is nearly impossible to get them to change their minds. At least this means you won't have to worry about the mental issues that cultivation can cause. I gave her a bow. Thank you, Senior Sister Jiao. Since both my sources gave the same information, I could proceed. Being weaker than other Grandmasters was fine. As Elder Mu said, I relied on my fire seed more than my cultivation base, and even if my chi wasn't as powerful as other peak Grandmasters, I would still be able to earn just as many credits from the system. The situation might not be ideal, but it would help me create a solid foundation for success in future lives. As a martial disciple, cultivating meant pulling chi from the environment and infusing it into one's muscles. When working to advance their cultivation base, disciples could only focus on drawing chi into a single section of their body at a time. Once the muscles in this chosen section were filled to capacity, they would then be able to use this stored energy to open an acupoint in that part of the body, allowing the connected muscles to constantly, passively gather energy. For martial disciples, chi was mostly locked in the muscles. To create a flame in their right hand, a disciple would channel the qi from their lower right arm into their palm. If their lower right arm ran out of qi, it was possible to slowly drag additional energy from other parts of their body to replenish it, but they were usually better off waiting for it to recover. After opening acupoints in all parts of one's body, a cultivator was ready to advance to martial master. The goal of a master was to create meridians throughout their entire body. These were essentially blood vessels for qi, allowing it to flow quickly and easily throughout one's body. After the proper meridians were in place, it no longer mattered how much qi was in a cultivator's lower right arm, since they could seamlessly pull qi from anywhere in their body. It should be said, the total amount of qi a martial master could access was greater than that of a martial disciple, but the difference wasn't as significant as one might think. The massive quantity of qi needed to advance as a master was locked into static structures within their bodies, the meridians, so it was not usable for powering techniques. The primary difference between a master and a disciple was simply that a master had the ability to transfer and use qi from anywhere in their body. This made it so that even if a master were exhausted and had significantly less qi in their body than a disciple, they would still have an advantage because they could use what energy they did have exactly when and where they wanted to. So, what was a martial grandmaster? Within a cultivator's body, there was a place in the torso located slightly above the navel. This place was called the dantian. The dantian was a natural gathering point for the body's qi, but it was only noticeable in people who hadn't yet started cultivating, since cultivating shifted a body's natural qi flows. However, even if it was difficult to detect, the dantian still existed, and it was where qi wanted to accumulate. To break through to martial grandmaster, a cultivator needed to create a structure within their dantian capable of containing a vast amount of qi and then integrate this new structure into their meridians. This reservoir would greatly increase a person's qi capacity, and all of this stored energy could be delivered on demand, through one's meridians, to any place in the body. To grandmasters, this qi reservoir became their new dantian, and their dantian was this reservoir. The two were synonymous. Having received a rank 3 cultivation technique from Elder Mu, and having had Jiao confirm that the technique was legitimate, I was nearly ready to begin my breakthrough to martial grandmaster. However, after reading the details of what I would need to do several times, I understood that advancing to grandmaster would not be quick. I needed to prepare myself for a long stint in seclusion. The first thing I did was sell scores of pills to the pill hall. As a martial master peak, it would be normal for me to be able to create 10 to 15 pills a day, and I pushed what was normal to the limit in order to build up points as quickly as possible. While I didn't touch the competitive missions, I grabbed every regular mission that offered a decent return, and if one wasn't available, I focused on the pills the sect had put a bounty on. The main reason I needed to do this was because of the excessive cost of renting my apartment. At 100 contribution points a day, if I wanted to be able to seclude myself for a month, I would first need to save up the profits from selling 30 pills. I could have saved myself a lot of trouble by just returning to my cave in the Elders' Enclave, but I considered the comfort I gained from staying in this apartment more than worth the added cost. After thinking through everything I would need to do to complete my breakthrough, I knew that I needed to be prepared to spend at least a year in seclusion. This was costly, but with the rate I was concocting pills, it only took me 2 weeks to save up enough points to pay for rent. After that, I prepared pills. Of utmost importance were Meridian Builder pills. These would provide me with the qi and focus I would require if I wanted any hope of completing my dantian in a single sitting. I also needed fasting pills and restorative pills. These were simple rank 1 pills that would alleviate my need for food and sleep. Using such pills was usually considered a bad idea. Few alchemists in the sect were able to concoct them with perfect purity, so consuming them was a quick way to absorb untold amounts of pill toxins. Even beyond the toxin problem, a body needed real food and rest. These pills could alleviate that need for a time, but eventually, the lack of true sustenance would damage one's foundations. However, this was a special situation. First, I was one of those few alchemists who could make perfect fasting and restorative pills. Second, if I stopped cultivating for any reason, my dantian would be irreparably damaged. The minor damage my body would suffer from not eating or sleeping for a few days paled in comparison to what would happen if I ruined my breakthrough. Finally, while my rented apartment was appointed with well-made furniture, none of it was ideal for long stretches of cultivation. To provide myself with as much of an advantage as possible, I spent several thousand contribution points on a top-notch cultivation mat. While this mat may have appeared to be little more than a thick woolen blanket, a complex formation had been woven into it that would allow me to completely block out the world around me and avoid distractions. Once everything was in place, I returned to my room and sat down to begin my breakthrough. I started by weaving together a small, tight ring of qi. Once everything was complete, this ring would serve as the interface between my dantian and my meridians. Then, using that ring as a starting point, I slowly worked my way outwards and created a large quarter sphere with a ring in its center. When building meridians, the chi strands were slightly loose and had a bit of separation between them. This was to allow chi to enter and exit them as needed. My peak yellow technique used flat ribbons that could expand and contract so that I could more carefully control the rate at which this process happened. Building a dantian was different. Chi should only be able to enter and exit through the meridians, not through the dantian walls, so it needed to be weaved together tightly enough that nothing would be able to leak out. This requirement, the need to create a woven surface with absolutely no gaps, made creating a dantian a far more difficult and time-consuming task than creating a meridian. It took me more than a week just to create the first quarter sphere. The cultivation technique I was using called for the creation of 4 such pieces. This was to allow for 4 openings in the dantian. My rank 2 technique created 2 meridians in my torso, and each of them would need a pathway in and out of the dantian. After the first piece was complete, I then needed to continuously expend a bit of my focus to hold it in place as I worked on the second piece. After the second piece was complete, I had to keep both completed pieces locked into place. While working on the final piece, I was not only concentrating on weaving a perfect quarter sphere with 0 gaps, but I was also burdened with stabilizing all 3 previously created pieces. If I let up for even a second, there was a significant chance that one of the pieces would begin to unravel and wreak havoc within my body. While constructing the first piece only took me a little more than a week, because of the growing burden with each new section, constructing all 4 took me a total of 3 months. Even with the help of restorative pills, my mind was slipping, and I needed to sleep, but I couldn't. Not yet. With all 4 pieces complete, I refocused and began the tedious process of knitting them together. This used a completely different weave, and again, it had 0 room for error. Slowly, I placed one stitch after another. A few times, the threads and the pieces didn't line up perfectly, so I had to carefully pluck out the stitches and try again. This caused damage to the weave, but I didn't have a choice. It was the only option available. Weaving an entire dantian in a single sitting was far too complex a task for me to complete perfectly on my first attempt. Before weaving meridians, I had spent months practicing and perfecting the process, but dantians were different. They were nearly impossible to practice. I could only do my best and accept that the final result would inevitably be flawed. Finally, after a total of 5 months without rest, my dantian was completely formed. It sat silently in the middle of my torso and showed no signs of collapse or unraveling. At this point, I wasn't yet a martial grandmaster since my dantian wasn't connected to my meridians. However, because the initial structure was complete, I could rest. I no longer had to fear that it would unravel. When I started connecting my meridians, I would be in a race against time, and I wouldn't be able to pause the process until it was complete, so I took this time to eat, sleep, and recover. After 2 days of rest, I resumed my seclusion. From my dantian, I created 4 meridian-like branches and extended them until the ends were nearly flush against the 2 meridians in my torso. Then, I tied off the ends of 3 of them and slowed down the movement of chi within my body. Working as quickly as I safely could, I sliced open one meridian and wove one of the connecting branches into it. Even with my chi slowed, it still leaked through this opening and made connecting the branch challenging. Using all the willpower I possessed, I forced everything into place and knit it together. Chi began flowing from the newly connected meridian into my dantian. It pooled there, but if too much accumulated, it would begin to be forced out, causing it to burst through the 3 branches I hadn't yet connected. Swiftly, I made another slice further down in the same meridian and connected the next branch to it. This allowed chi to flow from my dantian back into that meridian, greatly reducing the risk of pressure buildup. Then, I repeated the same process with my other torso meridian, cutting it open and connecting one branch for chi to flow in, and then connecting the final branch to allow chi to flow back out. Once everything was complete, I could finally relax. When I woke up from a deep slumber, I couldn't help but smile. I had reached Martial Grandmaster 1. Of course, while I now had a dantian capable of storing vast quantities of chi, it was currently sitting empty. My new dantian didn't provide me with too many benefits unless there was energy stored inside of it. So instead of immediately ending my seclusion, I sat down and cultivated. I didn't have any rank 3 pills to help me, and the effects rank 2 meridian builders had on a grandmaster were limited. So, I just focused on cycling my cultivation technique to slowly gather energy. To advance as a grandmaster, I would first need to completely fill my dantian with chi. When it reached its limit and no more could be added, when the walls of my dantian started to buckle from the pressure of the chi my dantian contained, I would need to use my affinities and willpower to compress and compact my chi, making it denser and more potent. Each compression would be an advancement in my level as a grandmaster, and my chi could be compressed a total of 9 times. A Martial Grandmaster 10 was a peak grandmaster. I studied my chi as I cultivated. I watched as it slowly drained from my muscles, entered my meridians, and was deposited into my dantian. Being empty of chi, the acupoints in my muscles then pulled in chi from the environment at an accelerated rate. My dantian was nearly empty, but the chi inside of it was slowly accumulating with every second that passed. As a martial master, I hadn't needed to worry about cultivating regularly. The chi used when creating meridians was drawn in from the environment as they were being built, so master-level advancements didn't rely on stockpiling chi. Living as a grandmaster would be different. Gathering enough chi to advance would take a significant amount of time, and any time I wasn't cultivating, I was delaying my advancement, and using chi for any reason could mean ruining all the work I did to advance to the next stage. When concocting rank 2 pills, I hadn't needed to worry about the chi I was using. Performing alchemy had essentially been free. But now, spending chi to concoct rank 3 pills would mean depleting my cultivation base. I would need to become far more calculating when deciding which pills were worth such a price. Of course, I wasn't going to eschew rank 3 alchemy entirely. Learning rank 3 alchemy was far more important to me than simply advancing my cultivation base, but I needed to keep the costs and benefits of doing so in mind. If I spent energy concocting meaningless pills that didn't teach me anything, I would only be damaging my future. As a martial grandmaster, I could live for 300 years, and my cultivation base wouldn't start to stagnate until age 60. After that, if I still hadn't advanced, it wouldn't calcify until I was 90. This meant I had time. I had time to both learn alchemy and advance my cultivation. While I had originally been hesitant to use the weaker cultivation technique provided by Elder Mu, it did provide me with a backup plan for the future. If I couldn't learn alchemy and advance my cultivation at the same time, I could learn alchemy first and stockpile rank 3 chi gathering pills. Then, I could use them to quickly advance my cultivation. This might not be ideal, but it was nice to have the option of cultivating recklessly without needing to worry too much about my mental state. On the day of the Inner Sect Challenge, I met Jiao near the entrance to the stadium.
Are you ready?
I nodded with confidence.
Yes.
My skills with rank 2 pills have hit a point of diminishing returns. Without a significant time investment, a better affinity, or a blessing to help me, I'm basically at my limit. If this isn't enough to join the Inner Sect, then that's simply my fate. Jiao smiled at me. Just remember, to join the Inner Sect, you need powerful abilities and influential connections. The more of one you have, the less of the other you need. Since you're an independent, you won't have to compete with the faction disciples, but that also means you need to shine bright enough to stand out on your own. Your elder can only do so much for you. The unwritten rules of this challenge had become clear to me over the years. Each of the 3 factions would always receive the same number of Inner Sect disciples, so the real competition was within the factions, not between them. If one were the second best alchemist in their faction, it would be incredibly difficult to advance to the Inner Sect. Of course, the same number for each faction didn't mean only one from each faction. As long as the numbers were balanced, 2 or 3 disciples could be selected from each. The complication was that if the snakes had 3 excellent alchemists, but the tigers only had 1, they were incentivized to only allow 1 person per faction to pass. Since I was under Elder Mu, an independent elder, the faction games didn't affect me too much. I wouldn't be excluded because someone better had already been chosen, but I also wouldn't get included just because there was an extra slot. So, more than anything, I needed the elders to see value in promoting me to the Inner Sect. This value was about both the quality and the quantity of pills an alchemist could produce. The elders didn't just want someone who could give them a single excellent pill once a month, they also needed those who could produce dozens of high-quality pills every week. After contemplating my odds of success, I gave Jiao a reassuring smile. Elder Mu sent me a message. He said everything was taken care of, and he seemed confident that I would succeed.
Really? That's odd.
I heard that Elder Hu decided to attend personally this year. This made Elder Long and Elder Tao come as well. These 3 are each the heads of their faction's alchemy peak branches. The judging panel is completely stacked against the independents. I could only shrug.
I don't know.
He seemed sure that as long as I produced pills at my usual level of quality, it would be enough. Jiao threw her hands up in defeat.
Well, good luck then.
I'll be rooting for you.
Welcome everyone.
I am Tan Gaofeng, the Deputy Sect Master for the Twin Mountains sect in charge of the Alchemy Peak. If you are new to the sect and this is your first time at one of these competitions, I welcome you. I stood silently alongside my 18 competitors as the audience politely applauded. The Inner Sect Challenge is held once every 3 years. Every Outer Sect disciple who has reached the realm of Martial Grandmaster has been invited to participate. Unlike the competition to become an Outer Sect member, there is no set number for how many may be promoted to the Inner Sect. Instead, our panel of esteemed elders will decide who is most deserving of this honor. This is done on an individual basis, so you only need to do your best. I looked to where elders Hu Long and Tao sat in judgment over us. They would be the ones deciding my fate. After allowing his words time to linger, the sect master continued. For this competition, you will each be making 3 pills. We will start with the most straightforward. You need only concoct a fire-focused Meridian Builder pill. This pill should be familiar to everyone, so I hope that you will use this opportunity to show off the height of your abilities. This was the pill I felt the most confident about. Without a specific blessing to aid them, none of my competitors would be my match. Of course, it seemed unlikely to me that no one would have such a blessing. I just had to hope that the number who did was limited. I carefully prepared and began working. After melting the herb's physical structures, I burned away any and all of their visible pill toxins. As I was doing this with my spirit fire, I was careful to leave a thick layer of toxin whenever I came close to the medicinal energy. With the chi of a grandmaster, I was more than capable of supplying enough fire chi to eliminate such dregs, so there was no need to risk damaging the medicinal energy by allowing my spirit fire to get too close to it. When the medicinal energy was all prepared, I used my empowering technique to strengthen the medicinal earth energy with my fire chi. Finally, I combined each portion of medicinal power in sequence and then compressed it. The energy crystallized, and a small, perfectly round pill dropped to the bottom of my cauldron. I picked it up and examined it. I didn't have any abilities or techniques for analyzing rank 2 pills, but based on my experience, I could still do a rough appraisal. I estimated that it was a peak high-purity pill with 118% efficacy. Since only perfect pills were capable of achieving a base efficacy of 100%, and the theoretical maximum bonus of the empowering technique was 20%, I was confident that this pill would be enough to secure one of the top spots in this round of the competition. I had taken my time, so I wasn't the first to finish concocting my pill, but I wasn't far behind. I wasn't sure how much importance would be placed on speed, but I didn't want to lose points in this regard if I didn't have to. Once everyone was finished, the pills were all taken away to be judged. Sect Master Tan Gaofeng returned to the front of his podium. Next, you will all need to make a wood-focused Meridian Builder pill. He chuckled slightly. Everyone has a natural advantage when making the fire version, but this should stretch your abilities slightly more. The elemental cycle to create a wood-focused pill began with fire. I couldn't empower the medicinal fire energy the same way I had with the earth energy, but that didn't mean I was helpless. After studying countless techniques in the libraries of Elder Mu and the sect, I was able to create a derivative version of the empowering technique. I focused on the medicinal fire energy and carefully began adding my fire chi to it. This would not improve the fire energy in any way, and trying to force the issue would only damage the efficacy of the final pill. Instead, I wove strands of chi throughout the structure of the medicinal energy without ever touching it. In most pills, this would be futile at best as the chi would never truly integrate with the medicinal energy, but making the medicinal fire energy more potent wasn't my goal. After this initial stage was complete, I integrated this amalgamation of chi and medicinal energy with the medicinal earth energy. As the two were merging, my fire chi excited the earth energy, causing it to become slightly more potent than usual. This technique couldn't be used to produce any shocking alchemic wonders since using too much fire chi would overwhelm the mixture. However, it did allow me to improve a pill in ways the other disciples wouldn't be able to match. After completing my pill, I examined it. My estimate put it at 106% efficiency. This was far worse than what the empowering technique could accomplish, but it was still better than nothing. As I was the only one who added this extra step to the process, I was the last to finish in the second round, but I didn't worry about the loss of time. My improved pill should be considered far more valuable than completing the task a few minutes earlier. After our pills were taken away, the sect master assumed his position on the podium once more. The final pill for today will be a rank 2 explosive pill. Explosive pills were tricky, and I was surprised to see them as part of this competition. This pill consisted of 4 herbs, 1 wood herb, 1 metal herb, and 2 fire herbs. I didn't have any special method to help me here because I had never wanted to risk experimenting with explosives, so I could only execute the basic pill to the best of my ability. First, I combined the wood herb with one of the fire herbs, strengthening it. Then I wove the empowered fire herb together with the unempowered one. These two energies did not merge. Instead, they formed a structure resembling a large ball of twine with 2 different colored strings mixed haphazardly together. This combined ball of fire energy was completely inert since the energies could neither move nor combine. The ball of fire energy was then wrapped in fire chi, and the fire chi was wrapped in the energy from the metal herb. Finally, the energy ball was compressed until it crystallized into a solid form. I carefully picked up the final pill and gingerly placed it into a padded pill bottle. The fire chi acted as an insulator between the metal and fire energies. When crushed, the metal energy would pierce through the layer of chi and into the fire energy, destabilizing it. This would create an explosion, and I had no desire to be anywhere near this pill when that happened. When I was finished, I placed my pill bottle on a jade tray to be judged and quickly escaped to the edge of the arena. Some of the competitors were doing their best to fight for a place in the inner sect, and I wanted to be far away from them if their attempts ended in disaster. Fortunately, disaster never struck. Many people had their pills collapse, but this was always before they would have begun working with the metal energy, so there was never any true danger. After all the completed pills were collected, the sect master addressed us once more. Congratulations on completing the inner sect challenge. Please wait while the elders discuss your results.
Had I done enough?
My first pill could easily contend with anything a regular disciple could produce, and my second pill used a unique refinement process.
That should be enough.
The only thing that could keep me out of the inner sect was politics, and for that, I had to rely on Elder Mu. After half an hour of deliberation, the elders reached their verdict, an elder who stepped forward and spoke in a voice loud enough to be heard everywhere in the arena. Sect Master Tan, we have reached our decision. The first disciple promoted is Hu Jinpe. As he announced this, a wide, proud grin broke out on the elder's face. Then, Elder Long stepped forward. Next is Bao Duping. Finally, it was Elder Tao's turn. Third is Zhong Feilong. After each name, a small burst of applause could be heard from different parts of the stadium from the members of the chosen alchemists faction. After glancing at the other elders, Elder Hu spoke once more. We will also promote Wan Hong.
Wan Hong?
Was he related to Wan Hao? Wan Hao was in Elder Hu's faction, so were they advancing 2 people each? Elder Long lifted his chin to address the audience.
And Bao Dujin?
Elder Tao glanced around at each of the remaining alchemists. I congratulate everyone for their accomplishments today. However, the final inner sect disciple this year will be Su Feng. At this pronouncement, he looked directly at me with a wide, inviting smile. After the selections were complete, the disciples who were not chosen quietly exited the arena, while those who had been picked walked toward their respective elders. I wasn't sure what to do. Had I just been poached by the eyes? As a disciple under Elder Mu, wouldn't it be improper for me to join Elder Tao? I didn't know how to react, but Elder Tao represented the sect master. I had to give him face. I walked to where Zhong Feilong was already talking with the elder and gave a deep bow.
Hello, Elder Tao.
Thank you for allowing me to join the inner sect. He placed a hand on my shoulder and forced me to rise. Disciple Su, I've heard a lot about you. Welcome to the Righteous Defenders of the Twin Mountains. The Righteous Defenders of the Twin Mountain, or the Eyes as I called it, was the faction controlled by the sect master. Jiao was a member of this faction, so I had assumed that her influence had something to do with the reason I had been recruited, but when I met with Elder Tao the day after the competition, he made everything clear. Elder Mu has made significant contributions to the sect over recent years, so he has been recruited for a position within the Flowing Mountain sect. As he was leaving, he discussed your future with me, and we decided it would be best if you stayed within the sect to further develop your talents. So, he has transferred you into my care. I parsed the message behind his words. Elder Mu's significant contributions likely involved all the pills I had provided him over the years, and once he accumulated enough to advance, he discarded me. Likely, he believed that the cost of teaching me rank 3 alchemy wasn't worth the eventual return he would receive whenever I was able to start producing pills for him again. He had sold me for a quick buck and was willing to let others deal with my further education. It was a cold calculation, but I understood and accepted it. I wouldn't begrudge him following his own path of advancement. Everyone has their own dreams. Besides, in recent years, Elder Mu had done little more than provide me with countless herbs. I was somewhat hopeful that a true faction would be able to do more. Still, I couldn't deny that I had gained a lot from my time with the Elder. While I likely could have found a different path and arrived at this same place, and while that other potential path might have even been superior, the fact was that I had chosen to learn from Elder Mu, and I was where I was at this moment because of his help. If this were my only life, I would consider the debt between us square, but the assistance he provided me would have ramifications through many future lives, and I had only helped him in this one. I didn't know where that left us. I didn't know if I could or should help him in the future, but I would remember him. He helped me learn rank 2 alchemy, and he helped me reach Martial Grandmaster for the first time. In my soul, I knew that there was still a debt here that needed to be repaid. I returned my thoughts to the elder in front of me and gave a slight bow.
Thank you, Elder Tao.
I will do my best to contribute to my new faction. This made him laugh. I'm sure you will, but before we discuss how you will contribute, we should talk about your current situation. I believe that only a better understanding of the position you are now in will ensure that you do your utmost to improve upon it. His words felt slightly ominous, but I didn't feel he was directly threatening me. You are now a martial grandmaster. This is the final realm of what is commonly referred to as the warrior tier, which includes disciple, master, and grandmaster. This tier of cultivation is all about self-improvement. For advancement, you only need to rely on yourself. Something had been slightly bothering me for a while, and after hearing the name warrior tier, I wanted to know more. Thankfully, there was someone here who might be able to tell me what I wanted to know. Elder Tao, why warrior?
Why martial?
I never understood this. We aren't fighters, so why are we referred to as martial disciples and so on?
He sighed.
Others will tell you that it is because we are all fighting against the heavens, and that even alchemists join in on this fight. I believe that this is just a rationalization. Cultivation began as an extension of the martial Tao. Since the earliest and most powerful cultivators followed that Tao, they were the ones who got to choose the names.
I nodded.
Returning to the topic, while you still have a long way to go within the Grandmaster realm, this is the final step of the warrior tier. Martial Grandmaster peak is the end of cultivation for nearly everyone. Only a small percentage are able to advance further. He gave me a penetrating look. Are you familiar with the realms above Grandmaster?
No, Elder.
I only know that after Martial Grandmaster is Martial Lord. He folded his hands, thinking before speaking. Disciple, Master, and Grandmaster form the warrior tier. After that is the ruler tier. The realms are Lord, King, and Emperor. He turned and looked off into the distance. These are not just names. To become a martial lord, you must become a city lord and infuse karmic energy generated from your city into your cultivation. As the city prospers, so will its lord. To become a martial king, you must rule a kingdom, and martial emperors must rule an empire. It is possible to advance to false lord, where your cultivation base lacks this karmic energy, but while this will give you a modicum of additional power, it will not extend your lifespan, and you will never be able to progress any further. This, I realized, was Chun Wu-Jing's and Elder Mu's goal. They were aiming to take control of a city. They had said that it was impossible to advance to martial lord in the wastes and that they needed to find a way to leave, but they could have left at any time. Their goal wasn't just to leave, it was to leave in such a way that they would gain control of a city. I was still confident that my pills had something to do with Elder Mu's contribution, but there was no way any number of rank 2 pills would be able to buy an advancement to martial lord on their own. After a moment of internal musing, I looked back at Elder Tao. So, when you said that Elder Mu had been promoted to a position in the Flowing Mountain sect, you meant that he had become a city lord, right?
Yes.
His contributions reached the level where he was granted control of one of their minor cities. If he rules well, he may be able to advance to martial lord one day. His cultivation has already calcified, so it will be extremely difficult to do so, but it is possible. When you say you are certain that I will contribute to the sect, do you also mean that if I contribute enough, I will be granted a city? Elder Tao hesitated only slightly. It is possible, but that takes time. The Flowing Mountain sect doesn't have an unlimited number of cities to send people to, but when there is an opening, if your contributions are substantial enough, then yes, you will be able to apply for a position as a city lord. I wasn't sure if False Lord would get me the same credits that a proper ascension would, but I doubted it. If necessary, I could leave the wastes and make a false ascension near the end of my life, but there was no reason to do that until I knew for certain that achieving a true ascension was impossible. What do I need to do? The elder folded his hands in front of him.
Make pills.
I will ask for nothing more from you than Elder Mu did. We will train you in alchemy, and you will use what we teach you to provide the sect with pills.
I nodded.
How many pills did an average grandmaster make? I needed to figure out what production numbers I could hit without appearing suspicious. As I was thinking this, Elder Tao dumped a bucket of cold water on me. Elder Mu has told us about your fire seed and how it allows you to produce pills at higher than normal rates. I froze and a hint of worry crept into my eyes. The elder smiled and patted my shoulder.
Don't worry.
Yes, possessing treasure is the worst crime a person can commit, and any fire seed is enough to cause a war between kingdoms. I'm also certain that nearly anyone in this sect would kill you if it meant they could extract your fire seed for themselves.
The thing is, they can't.
Only a martial king or higher can safely bond with a fire seed, and they can't come here. I hesitated, but I spoke my thoughts aloud for him. You can't bond with it, but you can use it to give more people spirit fires. While I didn't want him to attack me, I needed to understand where he, and by extension the sect master, stood. That would allow us to create a few more people capable of making rank 2 pills every year. I won't say it isn't an attractive option, but it is the inferior one. Our best disciples already receive spirit fires, So any extras would only go to subpar alchemists who will never advance far enough to make anything of any real value. You, however, will potentially be able to produce several times as many rank 3 pills as the best inner sect disciple we have. This is clearly our better option. Again, this appeared to be an exchange of benefits. They use me, I use them. Elder Mu had used me, but I had profited greatly from my time under him. The same would hold true for the sect master. However, one worrying detail was left unsaid. Why bring up both the need to leave the wastes to ascend and my fire seed in the same conversation? Because while I would be relatively safe as long as I remained in the sect, if I decided to leave, then I would be attacked and killed for my treasure. There was a warning buried in the subtext of this conversation, and I would have to be wary of it. The truth was that they were paying me in fairy dust. If I helped them, if I contributed enough, I might get a chance to ascend to Lord, but if I left the wastes to pursue that dream, I would almost certainly be killed for my fire seed. It was an option to consider later in life, something I could try just to see if it would work, but until I had wrested everything I could from this place, I would be a good and proper member of the righteous defenders of the Twin Mountains. I bowed to the elder. I can do that, but I need someone to teach me.
Again, he pulled me up straight.
Of course, you are already familiar with Grandmaster Jiao. She will take care of the basics and get you settled. I understand that you have been living in a rented apartment in the village. You may stay there if you wish, but we will provide you with a proper abode within the Righteous Defenders Enclave. It would be best if you stayed there for the time being, as it will make it easier to provide you with the support needed to learn rank 3 alchemy.
Thank you, Elder. I will follow your advice.
When I reached the foot of the path leading up the mountain, Jiao ran forward and gave me a big hug. Welcome to the Defenders. Let's go, I've got to show you around. She led me up to a small enclave near the very top of the mountain. There were only a few cave openings here, and she took me to one that looked to be in need of serious repair. We need to get your badge updated first. We passed inside and found a tidy, well-maintained office space within. While the furniture and decorations were nice, I couldn't help but focus on the light pouring in through open windows and making everything bright and lively. Where had the windows come from? This was supposed to be a cave inside a mountain. Jiao approached an open counter where a young woman was busy with paperwork. Sister Lu, Brother Su was just promoted to the inner sect as a new member of the Defenders. He needs his new jade. Sister Lu flashed me a bright smile. Congratulations. Just give me 1 second. After a bit of rummaging around, she produced a new jade with the character for inner carved into it. I handed her my old jade and attached this new one to a loop on my waist. Sister Lu clapped her hands together.
You're all set.
Do you need anything else? Jiao stepped in with the answer. No, Elder Tao has already arranged everything for us. With that, we left the office and stepped back out onto the side of the mountain. Everything had changed. Instead of being a barren mountain with only a few visible caves, the area around me had turned into a small settlement carved deep into a massive cavern with one side entirely open to the sky beyond. I couldn't help but mutter in a mix of annoyance and wonder. It's the same as last time. Was Elder Mu's place like this too? Was everything there just an illusion? Jiao giggled. No. What you saw there was all real. Only the factions have a place like this. The independent elders don't have the resources for it. As she spoke, I looked around and then out across the open vista. My eyes were drawn to the mountain where the Marshall Peak was located. Instead of just seeing the same wooded mountain I had seen in the past, I saw a complex, walled fortress. A tall wall wrapped around the middle of the mountain, and another wrapped around its base. Then, 2 more rings circled the mountain from further out. The total encircled area was massive, but only small pockets showed any signs of habitation. Most of it was a blasted wasteland where only scrub bushes were growing. Jiao turned solemn when she saw where I was looking.
That's the Marshall Peak.
People from the inner sect can go there, but you have to be careful. If someone doesn't realize you're an alchemist, or they just don't care, you can be attacked at any time. We are supposed to be protected from their internal conflicts, and since you are with the Defenders it will be even safer for you, but safer doesn't mean safe, you know?
We can go there?
Can we visit their technique halls? Jiao hesitated. Sure, but they don't have much that will help you. Everything they have is focused on the martial Dao. Even their cultivation techniques aren't of any use to us. The elements they use are no good for alchemy. Well, I mean, they might have some fire techniques, but we have all those over here already. But I can study them?
Yeah, sure.
Both peaks use the same contribution point system.
Again, just be careful.
Some of the disciples might not like you poking around in their techniques. Mostly, the only reason to go over there is if you want to specially recruit people to go out on a mission for you. Like, if you need a rare ingredient. You can request it from the pill hall, and they will issue a mission to the Marshall Peak, but if you want to personally choose someone for the mission, you will have to go there yourself. Missions to gather rare ingredients? Can I leave the sect to do something like that too?
Zhao snorted.
If you want to, I guess you could, but you would probably die out there. There's always a lot of competition for anything of importance. It's not just our sect that's out there searching for valuables, after all. The powers surrounding the wastes also send their youths here to hunt for resources.
Besides, what's the point?
Just stay in the sect, earn contribution points, and send others out to do your dirty work. Alchemy will earn you points far faster than any gathering mission will. I wasn't in any hurry to leave the sect, but I was happy that it seemed like a lot of my restrictions had been removed. The elders and sect master expected me to be pumping out pills for them, so I doubted I truly had the freedom to go wherever I wished, but they were at least providing me with the illusion of freedom. After showing me around the important places in the sect master's enclave, Zhao then showed me my new residence. Here we are, what do you think? The house she had brought me to was in a secluded corner of the enclave with several other small homes. The place wasn't large, but it met my needs. It was clean, and it had well-made wooden floors. The walls were covered in a smooth chalk plaster, and several windows let in ample amounts of natural light. There was only one problem. The home possessed no bed, chairs, or any other furnishings. It's good, but what about the furniture?
Zhao snorted.
You have to buy it yourself, of course. You can't expect the sect to just give you everything, right? I guess not, but I had to think about how to phrase my worries. When I was given a place in Elder Mu's enclave, I was warned that anything I did, including adding furniture, might cause other disciples to challenge me for ownership of the place, and if I lost, I would lose everything I put in there. It made me unwilling to buy anything.
Really?
Were you given one of the top places to stay or something? No, it was little more than a hole in the ground.
Strange.
Still, you don't have to worry about that here. Not with this place at least. There are luxury residences that you can challenge for if you want, and the living conditions there are a bit better, but that's more about status than anything else. This is just a basic home. You won't be challenged over it. Feel free to make it as lovely as you wish. After a short discussion, Zhao left and allowed me to get settled. While I needed to decide what kind of furniture to buy, and I needed to move my nice cultivation mat over from my place in the village, that was a job for the future. Instead, I needed to take stock of where I was and what I needed to accomplish. I thought back to the list of goals I had made at the start of this life. I had obtained a good profound rank cultivation technique for both ranks 1 and 2, but I still needed to get a copy of the matching rank 3 technique. I had gotten the earlier volumes from Elder Mu. With him out of the picture, I wasn't sure if I could find a copy of the rank 3 technique, but I needed to try. I had learned to use my fire seed, and I could make rank 2 pills exceptionally well. Now, I needed to move forward and learn rank 3 alchemy. I had learned a bit about the wastes and the political pressures surrounding it, but it would be good to get more information on the topic. As far as information about the fight at the Su clan, I had learned Tian Lei was a member of the Tigers and was thus from a rich, noble family. So, it was possible that the fight had nothing to do with the sect but was instead some kind of power grab by these noble families. That attack wouldn't occur for another 60 years, though, and getting any solid information about it beforehand would be difficult. The only goal I had made absolutely no progress on was finding a spatial spirit fire seed. I needed to keep my eyes and ears open for one. I could consider purchasing the information about where to find one for the system, but I was going to be stuck in the sect for most of this life anyway. There was no reason to spend credits on this yet. Did I need to add any goals? I needed to clean out the factions technique hall and visit the Marshall Peak to pillage what I could from there. I regretted not being able to store rank 3 techniques in my mental library, but the cost to do that before this life had just been too extravagant. I also wanted to keep an eye open for any information I could get related to auctions of valuable goods, hidden treasures, or any other important discoveries. I needed to do some basic information gathering and uncover anything that might be of interest to me later. This would be a bit of a hassle, but there was no reason I had to do it myself. I should be able to use my alchemy skills to hire people to collect the information for me.
It shouldn't even be that hard.
I was mainly interested in open, freely available news about the recent past. I just needed to gather anything that seemed important and sort through it for the bits I could use. Learning rank 3 alchemy would be a major time sink, so I didn't want to add too many goals, but one final item I decided to shortlist was at least learning information about joining the Flowing Mountain sect. I wouldn't put my hopes on moving up and claiming a city this life, but I did want to know the requirements so I could consider pursuing that path in the future. I took out my mental journal and jotted down some notes. Get the rank 3 profound technique. Learn rank 3 alchemy. Get more information about the area. Learn about the Su clan. Look for information about a spatial fire seed. Pillage techniques, faction fighters, more. Gather valuable intel. Learn more about the Flowing Mountain sect selection. There was one more potential goal that I had to consider. Elder Tao had said that to become a martial lord, I would need to become a city lord and use the karmic energy the city generated to advance. While this might be possible to do through the Flowing Mountain sect, I had to wonder if there was another way. System: is it possible to become a martial lord without first being a city lord? Cost of information is not possible to calculate at this time. Maybe I could try approaching the question from a different direction? Is it possible to become a martial lord without using karmic energy? Cost of information is not possible to calculate at this time. Neither a yes nor a no. Such a path might be possible, but it didn't seem to be one I could aspire to walk in this life, so I set such thoughts aside for the future. Satisfied with my plans, I put away my journal and got busy with decorating my apartment. The next day, Jiao arrived to begin my lessons on rank 3 alchemy. Alright, so Grandmaster Alchemy. She tapped her chin with one finger while thinking about how to explain. Really, there isn't much to say about it. Let's just get some ingredients and get to work. Wait, what? Yeah, you're already pretty good with rank 2 pills. Rank 3 is just more of the same. Nothing much changes between Master and Grandmaster.
Melt the physical shell. Burn away the toxin.
Combine the energy.
Compress it into a pill. Boom, you're done.
Then, why did Elder Tao say I would need help to learn it? I should just be able to do it now, right? She gave me a sly grin. Sure, as long as you're good enough.
Go ahead.
Her response made me hesitate, but she didn't allow me to back down.
Wait here a moment.
Upon saying this, she ran off and disappeared somewhere. A few minutes later, she returned with a small jade box.
I got some herbs.
Let's grab a cauldron and see what you've got. We walked into one of the private work areas, and Jiao showed me what she had brought. These are for a rank 3 regeneration pill. It's one of the easiest pills, so it's a good place to start. Basic sequence of metal, water, wood, and you're done. I picked up the herbs and was about to get started immediately, but when I looked at them in Chi's sight, I was stunned. What the hell? A wide grin spread across Jiao's face. That's what you have to expect from rank 3 herbs. The herbs she had given me were the nastiest things I had ever seen. Not in regular sight though. In normal vision, they were perfectly normal plants, but in Chi vision, they were living nightmares. All the herbs I had seen before had a core of medicinal energy surrounded by a layer of toxins, and while burning these toxins away might be difficult, the process was rather straightforward. Working with rank 1 herbs, I had learned that there were flecks of toxins mixed in with the medicinal energy, so it was nearly impossible for the average alchemist to completely cleanse an herb's energy, but that was just a matter of a few flecks here and there. These herbs were more like demonic Rorschach tests. The toxins and medicinal energies twisted upon each other in random ways. There were globs of medicinal energy stuck in layers of toxins, but also some globs of toxins stuck in layers of medicinal energy. There was no way to preserve all the medicinal energy in these herbs. Some of it had to be destroyed just to access the toxins it was protecting. Jiao patted me on the shoulder.
Don't just stand there.
Get to work. I set my mind to the task and began. The herbs she had given me had been mostly contaminated with metal-based toxins. Even the toxins in the metal herb she gave me seemed to be mainly metal-based. That seemed odd since from what I knew, the herb should have absorbed and incorporated that energy, but I didn't have the herbalism background needed to understand it. The fact that it was all metal-based, though, made the toxins a lot easier to deal with. Fire melts metal, so my fire chi would be excellent here. Not only did it have an elemental advantage, but it had also just gotten an upgrade from my advancement to Grandmaster and was far easier for me to control than my spirit fire. I focused my chi and sent a strand to start the work of destroying the ball of toxin in front of me.
Nothing happened.
My chi just bounced off the herb's toxins. I increased the amount of chi I was using, and then doubled it again. Finally, the toxins started to evaporate, but the drain on my chi reserves had become extremely noticeable. I would be able to complete the pill at this rate, but it would take nearly everything I had. I continued slowly until finally the first area of medicinal energy was nearly exposed. However, I wasn't used to performing alchemy with this intensity of chi, and a small strand of my energy split off and hit the metal-based medicinal energy. In a flash, all the medicinal energy in that entire region vanished. While stepping up to rank 3 herbs had meant the toxins I needed to deal with were significantly more robust, the medicinal energy of such herbs had become equally fragile. At that point, the metal herb was little more than waste material, so I put it down. Jiao reached into the box of herbs and took out another one. Try the next one with your spirit fire. My spirit fire was earth-based, and it was usually a poor idea to use earth against metal, but I followed her advice. At first, the spirit fire had no effect, but the more I opened the floodgates of my soul, the more powerful the fire became. Usually, earth would make metal stronger, but there was a breaking point where earth would overwhelm it. Jiao smacked my shoulder. What are you doing? Use your qi to control it properly. I had never practiced using my fire seed like normal spirit fire users did. I had never needed to. Instead, I had developed my own ways of manipulating it that were impossible for people without a fire seed. This had worked well in rank 2, but with the extreme amounts of energy it would take to concoct rank 3 pills, it looked like I might need to learn some new skills. Instead of just controlling the direction and intensity with my soul, I began trying to also use threads of qi to empower and direct the flames. This combined force of qi and spirit fire would have been complete overkill in rank 2, and it likely would have ended up with any herbs I was working on instantly turning to ash, but for rank 3 this was what was needed. With both qi and spirit fire combined, the flames cut through the toxins like butter. System: how much would it cost to buy an ability that mimics One House Blessing? Cost of such an ability is not possible to calculate at this time. I had assumed as much, but it was worth a quick check. What about a similar ability that is only able to affect herbs up to rank 3? Rank 3 Complete Herbal Enhancement. Cost 1 billion credits. How much if it only affected rank 1 or 2? Rank 1 Complete Herbal Enhancement. Cost 100,000 credits. Rank 2 Complete Herbal Enhancement. Cost 10 million credits. So, even buying an ability that could only affect rank 1 herbs was out of the question. I would need more credits than the total of everything I had earned to date. Then, even if I bought it, it would be impossible to maintain it as a relevant ability as I climbed through the realms of cultivation. Even now, rank 1 enhancements would do me little good when I could just make perfect rank 1 pills instead. Instead of going down the rabbit hole of trying to get this kind of blessing, what I needed to do was learn herbalism so that I could simply create far superior herbs to start with. That would require both a source of knowledge on the topic and the space to grow said herbs. I didn't have either of these yet, but this path offered far more possibilities for the future. This made me wonder about a few other prices. System: how much to learn rank 1 herbalism? The complete skills and knowledge of a disciple herbalist. Cost 10 million credits. It was the same as when I asked about alchemy long ago. Thinking about it. System: how much to master rank 1 alchemy? The complete skills and knowledge of a disciple alchemist. Cost 9.9 million credits. There was definitely something suspicious about those valuations. Why are those prices so high? Relevant information. Cost 8 million credits. Definitely suspicious. How much to learn rank 1 herbalism to a level similar to that of my ability in rank 1 alchemy? Cost 100,000 credits. The cost of purchasing new skills from the system was just too high. If I had that many credits, there were other things that I would want to purchase first. Instead, I would need to start trying to learn herbalism on my own. As long as I was still producing pills, my taskmasters shouldn't mind if I engaged in a few other pursuits. Aside from herbalism, I also wanted to start learning to create formations, but that had its own problems. Formation specialists used earth qi. I had a dual-element fire and wood qi cultivation technique which would allow me to practice both alchemy and herbalism, but adding earth qi to the mix would, I assumed, require an earth rank cultivation technique. I had never even heard of anyone mention one of those. Retreating from thoughts of system purchases and plans for the future, I returned my mind to the present. I had told Jiao that I would finish my work with rank 1 within 1 week and that I would then begin a focused study of rank 2 techniques. In truth, I already felt that my grasp of rank 1 techniques was sufficient. Instead of using my time to study alchemy, I took the herbs that I was meant to use during this week and transformed them into pills as quickly as possible. I was able to finish everything in less than a single day, giving me 6 days of free time before the elders would expect me to delve back into my studies. While I had been told that I could leave the sect whenever I wished now that I was an inner sect disciple, I knew that the situation was a bit more complicated than that. There would likely be a subtle but fierce resistance if I showed any desire to do so. Therefore, I needed to find other ways to accomplish my goals. Instead of leaving the sect, I went to visit a place I hadn't been in a long time, the city of the nominal disciples. Working with outer sect disciples could get complicated, but given the mental state of the nominal disciples, things would proceed far more smoothly. It took me a bit more searching than I had expected, but after a few hours, I finally found my target. I walked up to my oldest friend in this world and gave him a martial salute. Disciple Bao, please follow me. There is something I wish to discuss with you. Bao was someone I trusted. I didn't know him at all in this life, and I didn't know where his experiences this time around would have taken him, but I knew that he would not be involved in the deep politics of the sect. After all, He was only a simple low-level nominal disciple. Bao gave me a deep bow. Senior brother, how may this one serve you?
Let's talk in private.
Bao didn't protest, but that could have been because I didn't give him an opportunity to. I firmly guided him to a private dining room in one of the larger restaurants around the city. After ordering some dishes, I got to business. Junior brother Bao, how is your life in the sect?
Are you well?
He answered without hesitation. Senior brother, thank you for your concern. I am very well. Junior Bao, let's drop the formalities. My name is Su Fong, just call me Fong. It was nice having a higher position. It let me set the rules of decorum. Bao, I have a project that I'm working on, and I would like your help with it if you're willing.
Senior. Fong. I don't think.
I mean, I'm just a nominal disciple. He gestured at his disciple robes as he stammered his response. I kept my voice calm to try and soothe him.
Please listen.
I'm only making an offer, and you should feel free to decline it, but I know that you can do what I need.
All right. Great.
I need knowledge and information that isn't available to me in the sect. Books, techniques, anything of value. If someone finds an old tomb that holds a valuable relic, I want to know about it. Mostly though, I want information on herbalism, formations, refining, and beast taming. But the sect. What I want isn't available in the sect, and I can't do this myself, so I need someone to help me. I chose you, but I don't know you and I can't leave the sect. I folded my hands in front of me and gave him my best winning smile. You will have to quit the sect, yes, but if you work with me, you and your family can live happily for years to come. I will provide you with as many pills as you need. Right now, I can provide you with countless rank 1 and 2 pills of extremely high quality. You just need to sell them and use that money to buy information. Gather as much as you can. Especially books on low-level herbalism and formations. I don't care how much money you keep for yourself. As long as I get the information I need, I will be satisfied. I could see the struggle that was happening inside Bao's mind. His dream was to prosper in the sect, and in a single sitting, I, a completely unknown person, was asking him to throw it all away. How many people would be willing to do such a thing, especially for a stranger? There was only one thing that weighed heavily in my favor. Bao had been cultivating a technique that encouraged trust and naivete. Finally, after several minutes, he nodded his head.
All right. Bring me the pills. I'll do it.
Note: this chapter was posted for April 1, 2024. Non-canon chapter just for fun. Feel free to read or skip at your leisure. After finishing all my pills for the day, I left the workshop and headed home. Jiao, I said upon entering, how was your day? Ugh, same as every other, she said. There's a new guy in the outer sect that keeps causing problems. No matter what happens, he just keeps shouting at people to kneel. I gave her a quick kiss on the cheek.
It will get better, I said.
He just needs some time to calm down. She shook her head at that. It wouldn't be so bad if it was just a normal disciple, but he is a Hu, so we can't do anything about it. There was nothing I could say to that, so I decided to just change the subject. So, I think I want to take a short trip this weekend, I said.
Oh?
You're getting out of the sect? Where are you going to go? I want to go back to Dragon Gate City for a couple of days. Wu Jing and Mei were the ones who suggested I join the sect, so I just wanted to visit and thank them for their advice. Who is Mei? She asked in a strange inflection. Oh, she's one of the attendants at the Blue Wind Pavilion. She's a beautiful girl with long, flowing hair and bright red lips. Her blessing makes her amazing, too. She always knows just what to say, I said, thinking back to my short time in the pavilion. Really, said Jiao with a sharp tone, she sounds nice. And you are going there to see her? As she spoke, Jiao walked over to where I was standing. Yeah, it's been a while since we have seen each other, and I would like to reconnect, you know? That sounds great, said Jiao with a flat expression. Just one thing. Before I knew what was happening, Jiao punched out and hit me directly in the chest.
Her strength was immense.
Her fist went directly through my ribcage and exploded my heart. Have a good time on your journey, she said.
You have died. Calculating.
You died as a marital disciple 1.
10 credits awarded. Total credits, 10. My eyes opened.
I was standing in front of a large crowd and Jiao was next to me. We were both wearing bright red and gold robes. Jiao's hair was done up in an elaborate bun with jade and gold ornaments. In the crowd were various elders from the sect, and even Sect Master Tan had shown up. While I was trying to get my balance, she took my hand and led me to a chamber at the side of the large hall we had been standing in. After we entered, Jiao reached up and kissed me. Husband, she said with a soft smile. Jiao, did you just kill me? I said, trying to get my balance. What? she said with a shocked expression. Why would I kill you? What are you talking about? It's just, I thought we were talking and I said I was going to go visit May for a few days and you killed me, I said in a bit of a daze. Who is May? She's the beautiful attendant at the Blue Wind Pavilion. I was just going to visit her for a few days when you killed me, right? I see, said Jiao. Was it something like this?
She punched me in the chest. My heart exploded. You have died. Calculating.
You died as a marital disciple 1.
10 credits awarded. Total credits, 20.
As soon as I opened my eyes, I saw Jiao. What the hell?
I shouted.
Why are you killing me just for saying I want to visit May? The entire hall fell silent. The dozens of guests stared at me.
Who is May? Said Jiao in an icy voice. You have died. Calculating.
You died as a marital disciple 1.
10 credits awarded. Total credits, 30.
When I woke up, I stayed quiet and kept my speech perfunctory until I could find a moment alone. While the wedding reception was still going on, I ducked into a small room by myself. Something was wrong, and I didn't know what. For some reason, Jiao just suddenly became murderous sometimes. I needed help, but there was only one place I knew I could go. System, I said quietly, I need to buy information. I want to understand Jiao's actions. The cost is not possible to calculate at this time.
Fine.
Just, why did she kill me? The cost is not possible to calculate at this time. So, I couldn't buy the information I needed. Was there another way to approach this problem? System, I want to raise my affinity. Permanent low, 9-star marital affinity. Cost 100 credits. I could just buy the temporary one for cheaper, but it would be best if I bought the permanent version. That way, even if I made a mistake, I wouldn't be out the cost. I just needed to gather some credits first. I walked back into the reception room and found Jiao. She was talking with a few of her friends. I decided to just walk up and join the conversation. Hey husband, welcome back, she said happily. We were just talking about you. Where have you been? I set myself for what was about to happen. Yeah, I said, I was just in the other room thinking about May. Have I ever told you about her? The expression on Jiao's face dropped in an instant.
Who's May? You have died. Calculating.
You died as a marital disciple 1.
10 credits awarded. Total credits, 40.
Jiao, I said when I revived at the altar, about May.
You have died. Calculating. You have died. Calculating.
You died as a marital disciple 1.
10 credits awarded. Total credits, 100.
System, I said short of breath. Constant deaths were draining. A single death wasn't a problem, but I think the constant torture damaged my soul. System, raise my affinity. Permanent low, 9-star marital affinity.
Confirmed.
Cost 100 credits. 0 credits remaining. Information flooded into my brain.
OOH.
I said as things began to click into place.
Oh no.
I hurried out of the small room I had secluded myself in and rushed into the reception. I saw Jiao talking with her friends, but I didn't hesitate. I reached out to her shoulder and turned her to face me. Jiao, I said solemnly. I just want to say, I'm sorry about May. She blinked at me and then smiled sweetly.
Husband, who is May? You have died.
Unlike with the rank 1 techniques, it took me years to perfect the sex rank 2 alchemy techniques. The primary problem came down to managing my fire seed. The sect had several techniques and methods for working with a normal spirit fire, but I was forced to adapt and change them to work properly with the seed. During these years, my focus was on alchemy, but I also spent enough time cultivating that I was able to save up enough chi to push myself to Martial Grandmaster 2. This had involved filling my dantian to the limit and then compressing the energy it contained until it stabilized into a denser form of chi. Jiao guided me during this process, but her assistance wasn't necessary. Everything went smoothly and I was easily able to advance. This breakthrough made my chi more powerful, so I needed to use less of it when concocting pills, but I also had to cultivate for longer periods to restore my energy afterward. In the end, my advancement had little impact on how quickly I could produce pills. For a fighter, advancing was important because it meant they could use more concentrated chi to send out more powerful attacks, but that wasn't important to me. All I cared about was how efficiently I could use my time to concoct pills, and advancing did nothing to improve that. I would still need to advance to ensure I earned as many credits from this life as possible, but after learning how little of an effect it would have on my alchemy, I no longer saw it as a priority. My main task these years had been producing pills for my faction. We all implicitly understood that everything I made truly belonged to the faction, but everyone maintained the facade that it all belonged to me and that I was willingly selling it to the sect for contribution points. Because the produced pills were mine, I was allowed to send a small portion of them to Bao for him to sell in the outside world. Since I wanted to maintain my polite fiction with the sect, what I sent him was just a tiny fraction of what I made, but a steady supply of nearly perfect rank 2 pills was a fortune in this part of the world. Bao used the profits from selling these pills to set up a small intelligence-gathering organization to gather any information I might find useful. Selling only rank 2 pills didn't provide him with enough resources to extend the reach of this organization outside the wastes, but paying for dozens of mortals to gather information inside of it was nearly free compared to what I could produce. This organization gathered an assortment of random bits of information about happenings around the wastes, but it was all pretty tame. The only bit that really interested me was that there was about to be a large festival where sects from outside the wastes were coming to recruit new disciples. According to Bao's information, such an event happened once every 10 years. This looked like it might be a different path I could use when I decided to leave the wastes in the future. Working my way up in the Twin Mountains sect might have advantages, but being directly recruited by the Flowing Mountain sect would certainly be faster. On a related note, Bao was also able to get me solid information about the powerful organizations that existed in the wastes. These were the Sioux Clan, the Blue Wind Pavilion, the Twin Mountain sect, and the Verdant Forest sect. Where the Twin Mountain sect was focused on alchemy and martial arts, the other, the Verdant Field sect, focused on herbalism. This limited number of powerful forces in the wastes was part of why Bao had a hard time purchasing information about the outside world. Any information would have to come through one of these 4 powers. The 2 sects didn't share information with outsiders, and the Sioux Clan outright rejected any and all overtures from Bao's people, so the only source of information was the Blue Wind Pavilion. They were willing to sell it, but it didn't come cheap. Even with the steady stream of rank 2 pills I was able to provide him, Bao had to carefully choose what he spent his money on, and he chose to focus most of it on buying the techniques I had requested. Over the years, he was able to gather a handful of rank 1 and 2 herbalism techniques and a few rank 1 formation techniques. The quality of these manuals seemed questionable, and he hadn't been able to get me any information at all on beast taming or refining, but I just had to accept that such techniques were out of my reach for the moment. While I couldn't use the techniques he bought for me without the appropriate chi, I still diligently copied them down for the future. Aside from what Bao was able to get for me, I also pillaged everything I could from the faction's technique hall. There wasn't much new there, but they did have the rank 3 version of the mid-profound dual-element wood and fire cultivation technique. Since it was a rank 3 technique, I couldn't copy it into my library, so instead, I painstakingly copied it onto small 10 cm by 10 cm sheets of paper. I had to write as small as I could, and there were several diagrams in the book that were difficult to copy accurately, so this process took a significant amount of time, but I was persistent. Each time I finished a sheet, I tucked it safely away in my storage space, and over the course of years, I managed to copy the entire manual. At the end of 6 years, I determined that my practice with rank 2 techniques was sufficient. It was time to move on. When I told Jiao I was ready to start working on rank 3 alchemy, she seemed more than a little excited. She quickly ran out and brought back a jade box containing a couple of sets of ingredients. But before handing anything over, she calmed down and checked if I was really ready. Alright, you have the foundation you need now, right? This should have all been taught to you by Elder Mu, but, well, anyway, you're ready now? You've got all the techniques memorized, right? I gave her a confident smile. Yes. I had tried using rank 3 techniques on rank 2 herbs, but they were far too powerful. The low-rank herbs simply couldn't withstand that level of energy, so I hadn't been able to practice them properly. However, I had studied them enough that I felt I had a solid understanding of how they were supposed to work. Rank 3 techniques differed from the rank 2 ones a bit, but these differences mainly centered around focusing and directing significantly higher quantities of chi. The basic ideas of how they worked and when to use each technique weren't any different. Jiao reached into the jade box, took out an herb, and carefully handed it to me. Okay, here, take a look. It had the same mess of toxins that I had seen in the ones the last time we did this. So, there are pockets of toxins trapped within the medicinal energy, right? You have 2 options there. Do them first or save them for last. Doing them first allows you to throw away the herb if you mess up without wasting time on the rest of it. That's what most skilled alchemists do. But you need practice more than anything. Clean up the easy spots first as practice, then do the harder bits. Save the enclosed bits for last. If you burn off too much efficacy there, it is what it is. You will just need to do better the next time. I did as she suggested. Using a combination of spirit fire and fire chi, I began by burning away the toxins at the edges. My flame made quick work of them, slicing and incinerating them cleanly. Then, I slowly approached the medicinal energy and methodically cleaned the toxins surrounding it. I had learned a technique to make my flame incredibly smooth on one side so that it could get right up against the medicinal energy and clean it without any risk of damaging it. The downside of the technique was that it made the opposite side of the flame wild and completely uncontrollable, so I had to ensure that it was always pointed away from any other pockets of medicinal energy. After that, I had to work on the bits of toxic energy that formed a kind of weave with the medicinal energy. This was more difficult since having any part of the flame uncontrolled in such tight confines would be a disaster. Instead of boring through the weave, I trimmed it on one side and then the other, slowly flipping back and forth until all the toxins were gone. Finally, I had to do the globs of toxins that had been completely surrounded by medicinal energy. There was no perfect way to handle this. Ideally, I would have affinities that would let me control the medicinal energy and expel the toxins to where they could be more easily eradicated, but I didn't have that luxury. I formed my spirit fire into a thin needle and used it to puncture the medicinal energy. Instead of creating a small pinprick, a large hole opened up. I slowly passed my flames through this hole and into the cavity beyond to remove the toxins trapped within. At that point, my concentration slipped, and I made a mistake. The needle that was guiding the energy into the cavity sputtered and a small lick of flame danced out and hit the side of the opening. After that, a series of chain reactions caused the herb to completely collapse. The herb had turned to ashes, but Zhao didn't look upset.
That was good. Really good. You did great.
Once you have some practice with rank 3 herbs, you shouldn't have any problems at all.
Thanks.
I gave her a chagrined smile. It was difficult, but it didn't take nearly as much qi as I had expected. Once I get this down, I should be able to manage making several pills a day. A grin spread across Zhao's face. That's the spirit, but remember, rank 3 herbs are expensive, and you can't destroy too many. Our goal is to make money, not burn it, right?
So, be a little more careful.
You were doing your best to make a top-of-the-line high-purity pill there. You wanted to eliminate everything and make the best pill possible, but that isn't exactly necessary.
I blinked in confusion. What?
Isn't that the goal? Get rid of all the toxins. Zhao shook her head sharply.
No.
The goal is to make money. Burning herbs in pursuit of perfection is not how you do that. If some of the toxins are difficult to cleanse, leave them be. A mid-purity pill is always more valuable than no pill at all. You didn't have to worry about this much at lower levels, but these herbs are significantly more valuable, so we need to be more careful.
She was right, of course.
I had long since stopped making anything but high-purity pills. In my book, anything else was defective, but now, I was entering a new stage with exponentially more expensive herbs. I needed to make everything count, and if that meant avoiding toxins that appeared too tricky to deal with, that's what I would have to do. Some trapped toxins would have to just remain trapped if the cost of destroying them risked the collapse of the entire herb. Don't let perfection be the enemy of good enough. With that thought in mind, I returned to work. A week later, I presented my first rank 3 pill to Zhao. What do you think? Zhao picked it up and examined it closely.
Mid-purity.
I'd say it has an efficacy of about 72%, but I'll need to take it to one of the deacons to be sure. My smile dropped a bit. That estimate was a bit lower than I expected. I was hoping for something closer to 80%. Seeing my expression, Zhao laughed.
Don't worry too much. This is more than good enough.
The herbs we're sending you aren't the best, so this kind of result is expected. If they were easier to work with, you might have been able to achieve a higher level of purity, and I'm sure the efficacy would be much better. 72% is pretty good for the materials you're working with. Most importantly, it's profitable. I let out a light sigh. All right, I understand. How many of these do you think you can do in a day? I wasn't sure what a normal disciple could manage, and that hurt me in negotiations here. I couldn't lowball my answer or it could be scrutinized too much, but I didn't want to commit to spending all my time on alchemy either. Thinking about all the energy costs and comparing them to my regeneration speed, I figured I could easily make 12 pills a day right now, but there was still a lot of room to improve my efficiency.
11.
Right now, I believe I can make 11 pills like this one a day. With better herbs that require less work, maybe a few more, I'm not sure. I need to work on my efficiency. I'm not sure how far I can take it, but I should be able to reduce how much I have to spend on each pill by quite a bit. Zhao tapped her chin in thought.
Improving your alchemy is important, but you should be able to work quicker after you advance your cultivation.
Let's put the number at 10 pills a day for now. Then, once you make a bit more progress and can make solid high-purity pills, we can look at getting you some ingredients to make a couple of rank 3 qi gathering pills for yourself as well, but we shouldn't do that now. No reason to add extra pill toxins to your body unless you have to. Whether it was just the faction being cheap or whether they were really concerned about pill toxins, I still had to agree with the sentiment. I had no need to rush my cultivation. Aside from any problems that may come from doing so, my main concern was that it would mean I would need to spend more time making pills every day, and that would chew into my free time for my extracurricular studies like learning fighting techniques. I had pillaged everything I could from the libraries on the Alchemy Peak, and I had already set my sights on visiting the Martial Peak. As an inner sect disciple, I was allowed to do so, but from what Jiao had told me of the place, I couldn't help but feel that visiting the Martial Peak with zero knowledge of combat techniques was simply a death wish. Before I went there, I needed to be prepared. Years slowly passed me by, and I spent my days steadily improving myself. The greatest of these improvements was to my skill with alchemy. After 2 decades of practice, I had become far more adept at handling rank 3 herbs, and the number of rank 3 pills I concocted during this time reached into the thousands. While I couldn't always cleanse enough of the toxins for a pill to be rated as high purity, I could almost always create something. I was able to turn nearly any set of herbs into a pill that Jiao deemed good enough to be profitable. Part of the reason I wasn't able to make higher quality pills was simply because of the ingredients I was given to work with. Jiao openly admitted that the best herbs were given to other disciples and that I was only given the dregs no one else wanted. I was happy with this arrangement though. I didn't need easy profit-making opportunities. Such profits were meaningless to me. I just wanted as much practice as I could get. While my alchemy skills grew steadily during this time, improving my cultivation base had been far more challenging. My ascension to Martial Grandmaster 2 had been extremely smooth, and I had hoped that had been a sign of things to come, but with each advancement, compressing my chi sufficiently to take the next step became more difficult. The biggest factor in this increasing difficulty was the poor job I had done when constructing my Dantian. Ideally, to advance as a Grandmaster, I would have poured chi into my Dantian until it was filled to capacity. Then, I would have forced even more chi inside, causing its density to slowly increase. Once the pressure caused by this excess energy became too much for my Dantian to handle, I would then use my chi control to compress the energy until it locked into place, advancing me to the next stage of the Grandmaster realm. However, my advancements didn't go so smoothly. As soon as pressure began to build within my Dantian, its walls started to buckle. At this point, to prevent my Dantian from rupturing, I was forced to begin the compression process immediately. This limited the amount of chi that I could use during my advancement, and that in turn meant that I had to compress it into a far smaller ball than normal. The smaller the surface area of chi I had to push against, the harder it was to continue compressing it further. These problems with my Dantian were originally caused by small errors in the weaves of chi that I had used to create it. This created weak points that made its structure more prone to splitting than it should have been. At first, this was barely noticeable, but with each advancement, these small errors only grew and compounded upon themselves. After each compression, my Dantian required minor repairs in areas where it had suffered damage. Then, during subsequent advancements, while the areas I patched and fixed were able to hold without any problems, the process of patching those areas had weakened the structure of my Dantian in the surrounding area and created even more weak spots. All of this meant that I was becoming less than optimistic about my chances of ascending to Martial Grandmaster Peak in this life.
That was fine.
Peak Grandmaster was a goal that I had been hoping to reach, but it wasn't essential. I had been able to reach Grandmaster 5.
That was enough.
When I died, the credits I gained would be more than sufficient to set me up for a far better run the next time around. That being the case, I shifted my focus to other areas of study. While I was working hard in my alchemy workshop one day, Jiao stopped by for one of her rare visits. She had been coming around far less frequently ever since I had reached the point where I could consistently make high-quality rank 3 pills. "Disciple Su, how have you been recently?" I gave her a slight bow. "Very well, Elder Jiao."
"Thank you."
Jiao's promotion to Elder had happened several years ago by this point, but she still maintained her position as my primary handler. "Disciple Su, you will be turning 60 this year, and chi stagnation will soon begin to set in. Before this happens, you will need to undergo an evaluation for your promotion to Elder."
I nodded. "Yes, Elder. I know. When will it take place?" "In 2 weeks.
Be prepared at that time."
"Yes, Elder."
I gave another small bow, and she began walking away, but I quickly spoke up to stop her. "Elder, I plan to go to the Martial Peak to look through their technique libraries before my evaluation. I hope that this will be allowed." She hesitated before answering. "You are still an inner sect disciple, so it is within the rules.
Be careful though.
There's no true danger within the sect, but certain disciples may still threaten or attack you. If you meet anyone who tries to do so, just say that you are with the defenders, and you will be safe."
"Thank you, Elder."
I had gotten the permission I needed. In 2 weeks, I would undergo my examination for Elder, and I was guaranteed to fail it. After that, I would almost certainly be named an outer sect deacon. While my alchemy skills might be sufficient to compete with nearly anyone in the sect, both my cultivation base and political clout were severely lacking. I cared little about what title I was given, but outer sect deacons were not allowed to visit the Martial Peak, so if I wanted to go there, it needed to happen before I was removed from the inner sect. Regardless of Zhao's reassurances, I needed to treat preparing to visit the Martial Peak as if I were preparing to die. I wasn't sure of the exact situation over there, but I had heard horror stories from others who had made the trip. So, I had spent the last several years finishing up everything that I felt I needed to get done before I died. Aside from copying all the information I had gathered from both the sect and Bao into my mental library, the main preparations I made for my next life were tucked away in my storage space. I couldn't store much there, but I had the essentials. First was a small, thin copy of the Rank 3 dual-element wood and fire cultivation technique. This took up a significant amount of space, but it was my most valuable possession by far. Other than that technique manual, I mainly stocked up on a few pills I considered important. I didn't need to worry too much about cultivation resources, but I still stored a few perfect rank 1 Qi gathering pills and near perfect rank 2 Meridian builder pills. I didn't bother with any rank 3 cultivation pills though. I couldn't make them at a high enough quality that I would want to take them. Truthfully, I wasn't exactly excited at the idea of taking these rank 2 pills either. I would prefer to only use perfect pills, and I would hopefully be able to increase my affinities enough to make such pills before I next needed them, but I still went ahead and stored them just in case. Another type of pill I stored a decent supply of was Qi purification pills. Unfortunately, the profound rank technique I had gotten from Elder Mu had a problem with Qi purity. I could fix that by going through the system, but that would eat up a lot of credits. I had ideas for ways to fix this problem without the system, but until then, I would have to use a combination of wood and fire Qi purification pills to keep me going strong. The last jade bottle I placed into my storage space contained my ultimate escape plan, the most powerful rank 3 poison pills I could concoct. This was an idea that had been running through my mind for a while, but it had taken me time to develop the finished product. I used all my alchemy skills to make the deadliest, quickest acting poison that I possibly could. Importantly, I also worked to make it as painless as possible. As soon as I placed one of these pills in my mouth, I would die and know no more. After perfecting the recipe for this pill, I then practiced taking pills from my storage space and having them appear directly in my mouth. This way, even if I was tied up and my body was searched for any hidden items, I could still instantly pop a pill, die, and escape back in time. Finally, I filled what little room remained in my storage space with gold and silver coins. I had considered using this space for trade goods since a rank 3 pill took up little space and would be immensely more valuable than a few gold coins, but selling a rank 3 pill as a martial disciple would be extremely dangerous. It was much safer to use a bit of gold as starting capital and exploit my alchemy skills to make any money I needed. Along with my preparations for death, I also prepared ways to prevent it. For years I had been studying a variety of martial techniques, but I had little faith in my ability to use them properly. If it came to a fight, I was confident that I would be able to hold out against most martial masters, but I was certain that any competent grandmaster would be able to take me down without much difficulty. So, instead of planning to fight such cultivators, I would just buy them off. I couldn't skim many rank 3 pills off of what I made for the sect, but Bao was able to purchase several sets of herbs for me from the Blue Wind Pavilion at an exorbitant price. I used these herbs to generate cash, and then I used that cash to buy even more ingredients. After a few rounds of trading, I was left with enough pills that I was confident I could buy off nearly anyone on the Martial Peak. Just in case, I also removed a stack of gold coins from my storage space and placed a bottle of explosive pills inside. I didn't want to carry them around openly since I was worried they might randomly blow up if I got into a fight, but held within my storage space, they would remain safe until they were needed. I didn't want to use them since I didn't think killing people would help my situation with the locals, but I took them with me just to be safe. Getting permission from Elder Zhao to visit the Martial Peak had been the last step of my preparations. Now that I had her consent, I was ready to begin my journey. The Martial Peak was divided into 4 large regions separated by high walls. They were the upper mountain, the lower mountain, the first ring, and the second ring, with each section housing the elders, inner sect disciples, outer sect disciples, and nominal disciples respectively. As an inner sect disciple of the Alchemy Peak, I was allowed to visit the Technique Hall in every region except for the upper mountain. The nominal disciples' Technique Hall held the least interest for me since I could guess that the sect wouldn't allow them to study anything but the weakest of skills, but I still wanted to copy down everything I could, so that was my first destination. There was no direct path to the Martial Peak from the Alchemy Peak. To get there, I first had to walk back to the village of River Rock, located right outside the sect. When I got there, I took a moment to stand in the square where the young hopefuls would gather each year to be tested for acceptance into the sect. The place was much as I remembered it, but the lack of young, boisterous cultivators gave the place an eerie silence. In front of me stood two Paifeng arches. Before, I had always walked through the one on the left.
This time, I went right.
There was no sense of teleportation or disorientation as I passed through the arch. Those past perceptions had all been illusions. Instead, I walked a short straight path to a wide opening in the outermost wall of the Martial Peak. No guards were present there, and no one tried to stop me from entering. An illusion and shielding formation was the only barrier preventing access to the mountain, and my Jade identity token allowed me to pass without hindrance. On the other side of the gate was the blasted wasteland that was the second ring. A few weeds were scattered around on the ground, but in nearly every direction, the place was simply barren dirt that had been turned over and scorched by countless fights and explosions. A path continued straight ahead of me, but that led to the first ring which contained the outer sect, and I wasn't yet ready to go there. I needed to visit the Technique Hall of the Nominal Disciples. Following directions that I had purchased long ago, I followed a different path in a counterclockwise direction around the mountain. As I walked, the ground around me gradually became rockier, and massive boulders that must have tumbled down from high atop the mountain in ages past dotted the landscape. Not too far ahead of me, 3 men sat around on large rocks. They made no effort to conceal their presence. They were just sitting there, talking and laughing. As I neared, the 3 of them stood as one and walked in front of me to block my path. The burly man at their center lifted a large club and rested it against his right shoulder.
All right, pay the toll.
All 3 of these men were tall and had bulging muscles. The sleeves of their robes had been cut off, and they were dirty, but it was obvious that they were all wearing the robes of nominal disciples. I looked at them in Chi vision and saw that the 2 on the sides were Martial Disciple 7s and the man in the center was a Martial Disciple 8. The idea of 3 Martial Disciples stopping a Grandmaster and asking for some kind of toll almost made me laugh.
How much is it?
The men's faces turned serious, and their leader scowled at me.
You look like a fancy one.
How about you give us everything you got? These boys had clearly never seen an inner sect disciple's robes before and didn't know what they meant. This wasn't that surprising, but they should have at least been able to tell that something was wrong with my demeanor. I waved a hand and responded with a light tone.
No, I don't think so.
I just wanted to walk peacefully by, but if you want me to give you a free lesson, I will oblige. As my Martial Grandmaster cultivation base grew, I had no longer needed to worry so much about the mental effects of my previous cultivation techniques. They had become like subdued circuits in my brain that I was able to access, but I wasn't compelled to use them. However, I still tended to keep the friendly circuits from my rank 1 technique active as they helped me be cordial when dealing with people I didn't trust. That said, a wise man adapts to different situations like water adapts itself to different vessels. In this situation, friendliness wasn't helping. I turned those circuits off and flipped on the aggression that was intrinsic to my rank 2 technique. The group's leader snarled at me.
Get him.
His lackeys rushed me from either side. I could see that they were using some type of earth technique to enhance their movements and that the chi in their arms was concentrated to deal a devastating blow. I didn't even bother defending myself. They both rushed in and threw their punches. One was aimed at my head, the other at my torso.
I didn't dodge or defend.
I let them connect. I wasn't being cocky here, and I wasn't taking any pointless risks. I wanted to leave an impression on these boys to make the rest of my time here easier. By using my Chi vision, I had already gained a solid understanding of my opponent's strengths, and I knew exactly what they were capable of. Right before their blows landed, I channeled a small thread of Chi into a basic shielding technique to protect my body from any damage from the physical power behind their punches. Then, using my significantly higher affinities, Chi control and cultivation base, I wrested control of their Chi from them, and the moment their fists made contact with my barrier, I channeled their energy into the ground. When the punches from my 2 opponents landed, their entire bodies froze in place out of shock. I looked at them and cocked my head to the side.
Interesting. Let me try.
My Chi exploded outwards and slammed into my opponents. Since it was fire Chi, it wanted to scorch and burn, but I used a technique to force this explosive energy to be purely kinetic. The 2 men were blasted away and fell to the ground. They weren't hurt badly since I had limited my power output, but hopefully, they got the message that I wasn't someone to mess with. I looked at their leader.
Let's talk.
The bandit's leader screamed as he ran at me. He activated some type of earth chi technique, but I didn't stand around and wait for it to hit me. I used a master-level movement technique to blink forward right in front of him. Then, I simply tapped his fist, and his gathered chi dispersed. With him now defenseless, I slapped him hard enough to make him fly to the side and fall to the ground. As I did this, I added in a small bit of energy to stabilize his body so that his neck didn't just snap. The facts were simple. A martial disciple cannot fight a grandmaster. The innate defenses one gains by ascending to Grandmaster and compressing their chi make it impossible for a low-level cultivator to do any real damage. Even if I hadn't defended myself at all, these disciples wouldn't have been able to hurt me. I walked to where the leader was lying on the ground. He was big and burly, but he couldn't have been older than 18 or 19 years old. I did my best to loom over him. "Are you ready to talk now?" He growled at me. "You better pay the toll and compensate us for our injuries. You don't know what you've done.
We are Boss Hong's men.
If you even think about touching us, Boss Hong will make you regret it." "And who is Boss Hong?"
"Ha! What are you, a bumpkin?"
"Boss Hong is the master of this territory. He is a martial disciple 9. You might be able to defeat me, but you're nothing compared to him. Kowtow and admit your mistakes. If you do, I'll make sure Boss Hong leaves you with an intact corpse." The boy's face showed a level of confidence that I just couldn't understand. He was lying in the dirt, covered in wounds, and he was still threatening me. I wanted to use these kids to show me exactly where to find the technique hall and other hidden caches of knowledge, but since Boss Hong was their leader, he should have more information than they did. I gave the leader a toothy smile. "All right, take me to see Boss Hong. I will apologize to him personally." The kid just laughed at me. "You think you are worthy of seeing the boss?" I stepped on his right arm, shattering it.
"Take me to see Boss Hong."
"I need to apologize to him for breaking both of your arms." "Idiot, only one of my arms is broken."
I sighed.
Was this the cultivation technique they gave the nominal disciples here? It had similarities to the Earthheart mantra, but it also seemed to give them a strong belief in their leader, not just themselves. These guys were destined to be nothing more than foot soldiers for the rest of their lives, and they didn't even realize it. Knowing I had to play out the rest of the scene, I stepped on his other arm. "Now, take me to Boss Hong so I can apologize for your arms and for miscounting earlier." He began trying to scurry away. You'll regret this." I picked him up by the nape of his neck and set him on his feet.
"Move. Take me to Boss Hong."
I followed the 3 men through the wasteland until we arrived at a small village of broken buildings. There were only half a dozen structures here, and they all showed signs of battle damage. Every wall had at least half a dozen holes that had been patched up with broken boards, and the formerly tiled roofs had all been covered over with wax canvas. The sight was far worse than I had expected. "This is Boss Hong's place?" The leader smirked at me. "Yeah, just you wait." He led me to the center of the small settlement and began shouting. "Boss Hong, someone's here looking for trouble. We need your help to put him down." I almost laughed, but the aggression circuits in my mind kept me from doing so. I wanted to slap the fool back to the ground, but I decided to wait for the main character in this charade before making a move. A young man walked out of the building at the center of this decrepit village. It was still little more than a shack, and the door had been broken off at some point, but it was still the most impressive structure here.
"Oh?
Let's see who dares to cause trouble in my territory." I looked at Boss Hong. He was maybe 17 years old and had long hair tied up in a tight queue. He was wearing the pristine nominal disciple robes, and looking at him in chi vision, I saw that he was a martial disciple 9 with a perfect foundation. The moment the man saw me, his eyes widened in shock. Enraged, he ran forward and slapped the trio's leader to the ground.
"How dare you!"
I mentally flipped off my aggression and re-engaged the friendliness circuits. Boss Hong gave me a deep bow. "Lord Disciple, please forgive me for the impertinence of these fools. I assure you, they will be punished for their actions." I waved a hand dismissively.
"No need.
They brought me here to talk with you, and that's all that matters." Boss Hong hesitated a bit but mustered his courage to speak. "Lord Disciple, I must punish them. If I do not, it will only cause more problems in the future. Handle your affairs as you see fit. They don't need to be punished on my account, but your family business is none of my concern."
"Thank you, Lord Disciple."
Boss Hong looked in the direction of a couple of houses where high-level disciples were hidden from view.
"Take them away."
3 men walked out and hauled the trio somewhere else. Their fate was no longer any of my concern. Boss Hong dipped his head toward me. "Lord Disciple, how may this one be of service?"
I smiled.
"Let's find a place to sit down and talk." Boss Hong led me into a small sitting room in one of the dilapidated houses. There wasn't much inside, and the walls and floors showed signs of wear and damage, but it held 2 chairs and a small table. After we were seated, one of Boss Hong's men brought in a pot of tea and served us while 2 more stayed stationed near the door. The idea of sharing tea in this situation almost made me laugh. "Boss Hong, as you may be able to tell, I am from the Alchemy Peak, and I'm new here." Boss Hong's eyes widened a bit, and he began sizing me up. Was he going to try to attack me now that I revealed I wasn't a fighter?
I looked at him.
"I had planned to travel alone, but your men decided to show me around. Boss Hong winced at the mention of his men attacking a grandmaster. After a bit of thought, I realized that it might be nice to have a guide who can show me around the place. I am looking to visit your technique hall, and I would be interested in gathering any other information you will be kind enough to share with me.
Boss Hong nodded frantically. I can help with that.
I'll send my men to gather anything you want. I'll let you decide what's important. My main focus is on technique manuals, but any extra information is appreciated. Boss Hong glanced at someone who had been standing just outside. After a nod, the man disappeared. It will take him some time to prepare.
Of course.
I leaned back in my chair and started sipping my tea. Boss Hong was intelligent, and it didn't seem like I would have any problems working with him, but I knew that a clear exchange of benefits was expected. If he didn't see any return for his kindness, there might be problems later. Not with Boss Hong directly, of course. I doubted he could do anything to me even if he wanted to, but if he had strong connections with a deacon, things could become problematic. As we sat, I decided to probe for more information about the Marshall Peak. Boss Hong, why did your boys attack me earlier?
They didn't.
I waved a hand, cutting him off. I just want to understand the situation here. Why were they sitting by the road? Why were they stopping travelers? They need to earn contribution points, the same as everyone. At our level, there are only two ways to do that. The first is to take a mission and leave the sect to collect resources such as wood or bricks, simple things like that, and then bring them back to the sect.
I nodded.
They couldn't concoct pills, so this was the way they contributed. The other way to get points is through robbery. When a group is returning resources, we can rob them, taking either resources or contribution points from them. Though, we usually just impose a toll. That helps ensure disciples continue passing through our territory. If we took everything from them, they would either find new paths or stop taking missions altogether. But I wasn't delivering anything. That should have been obvious. He shook his head and snorted in disgust. They thought you were an outer sect disciple. Gangs in the outer sect send their weaklings to collect things from our mission halls. They have to pay a toll, or we beat them up. Their gang leaders could stop us if they wanted to, but they just blame their newbies for being too weak.
Your boys can take down a martial master?
They didn't seem that strong.
Not a powerful one, no.
Only the ones who get sent on messenger runs. So, were the messenger runs some type of hazing ritual? Perhaps a way to punish the new guys by proxy? What kind of toll do they pay?
A pill.
We get one chi gathering pill a week, but that isn't enough for most people. If we capture an outer sect disciple's identity jade, we can turn it in for another one. Instead of losing their token, most people would rather just hand over a pill directly. It was all about cultivation resources in the end. That was something I could deal with. Do you have one of these pills? Let me see it. Without hesitation, Boss Hong went to a side room, retrieved a pill bottle, and handed it to me. I took out the pills and examined them. Mid-purity basic chi gathering pill? This is what they give you?
Yes.
I looked at Boss Hong in chi vision once more. His foundation was nearly perfect. You've never taken one of these pills yourself, have you?
No. I haven't.
How did you know? Your chi is too pure. These pills will mess you up quickly. They aren't too effective at your level, and with the toxins they contain, they will do you more harm than good. If your boys have been taking these, that's the reason their growth has slowed down so much. Boss Hong gave me a solemn nod.
I understand.
I placed 2 pill bottles on the table in front of us. Here is my offer. First, 5 perfect superior chi gathering pills. Just one will be enough for you to reach peak disciple, and it won't introduce any toxins into your system. The rest can be spread around to your subordinates. Second, 3 high-purity meridian builder pills. These will be of great help to you as a martial master. Boss Hong stared at my pills with greed in his eyes. However, he had enough control to not simply try and grab them.
What do you need?
As I said before, information. Anything that might be valuable. Tell me about any notable events, or about important people or interesting discoveries. I don't need to know any secrets you don't want to share, but the more you can tell me the better. Even if the information is decades old, it can still be of use to me. Yes, I can do that. Some guys have been here a long time. They should know a lot of what you want.
I nodded at that. Also techniques.
You and your boys are using different cultivation techniques. That is clear enough. If they are available in the technique hall, I can grab them from there, but if not, I would like access to the manual you are using. They're using the standard sect cultivation technique. Boss Hong paused briefly before continuing. That one is available in the hall, but mine isn't. I won it in a competition. They keep a copy in the outer sect library, but you won't find it anywhere out here in the second ring. I only had a few weeks to study it, and I wasn't allowed to keep a copy. I waved this away.
No worries then.
I can get it later. While your men get to work gathering and writing down information, why don't you take me to the technique hall? Boss Hong led me to the large settlement where the nominal disciples' technique hall was located. When the deacon in charge noticed that I was from the Alchemy Peak, he gave me an unfriendly look, but he still allowed me unfettered access to the manuals. The main benefit of coming to this hall over the one on the Alchemy Peak was that it had techniques for all of the 5 basic elements. The main downside, however, was that it only contained techniques related to cultivation and martial arts. It didn't have any manuals related to alchemy or any of the other professions. After copying down everything that I wanted from the library, I asked Boss Hong about the possibility of hidden caches of knowledge tucked away somewhere, but he didn't have any information about such places. While most of the gang leaders were using more advanced cultivation skills, these were all from the Outer Sect's Technique Hall, and I would have access to them once I ascended the mountain. I wasn't entirely sure how much to trust the man, but it didn't matter too much in the grand scheme of things. A few extra techniques here or there weren't make or break for me. While Boss Hong couldn't help me much with techniques, he was able to provide a bit of information on the factionalism that existed in the sect. Apparently, the divisions I had noticed on the Alchemy Peak were much starker on the Martial Peak, and small gangs from different factions constantly fought against each other. One interesting tidbit was that Elder Hu's faction, the Tigers, had been able to recruit several promising disciples with powerful blessings in recent decades. This had nothing to do with their own efforts though. It was all because the noble clans around the wastes had started producing children with strong blessings at a far greater rate than normal, and most of them were focused on improving a person's combat abilities. I made a note of these observations in my journal for future reference, but I didn't think too much more about the situation. While I was nominally a member of the Eyes, I had no desire to get involved with factional power struggles. With everything I wanted to accomplish in the second ring complete, Boss Hong led me to the entrance to the first ring where the outer sect was located. When we arrived, I passed him an extra pill bottle.
Thanks for the assistance.
Good luck on advancing. Boss Hong gave me a deep bow.
Thank you, Lord Disciple.
The passage to the outer sect was a simple opening in the wall that surrounded it. There was no gate, and there were no guards. Instead, access was controlled through the sect's jade tokens, and unauthorized visitors were blocked from entering by a large-scale defensive formation. As I passed through the wall, I couldn't help but wonder what happened to people who lost their identity jades. With nominal disciples regularly robbing the weaker outer sect disciples, there had to be some standardized protocol in place, but I had never run into this problem myself, so I didn't know how it all worked. I made a note in my journal to look into this in the future. Following Boss Hong's information, I smoothly made my way to the Outer Sect's Technique Hall. Passing through the Outer Sect, I felt that conditions here were a bit better than what the nominal disciples had to put up with, though only slightly. The first ring was a mostly open grassland with a few small stands of trees dotting the area. There were no signs of the large-scale fighting that had churned up the earth in the second ring and turned it into a wasteland. As I walked along the path to the Technique Hall, I saw a few small groups of houses in the distance. I noticed that such places tended to have arenas made from packed dirt where cultivators were practicing martial arts, but I didn't approach too closely. I wasn't confident that I would be able to fight against a large group of martial masters, so I did my best to avoid provoking anyone unnecessarily. No disciples were lying in wait on my path, and I was able to smoothly access a town that served as a central hub for Outer Sect disciples. It had a technique hall, a pill hall, a mission hall, and a few other buildings. I was interested in visiting the pill hall to check its prices, but I refrained from doing so. As I lacked any solid information on the mental compulsions the people here were under, I couldn't predict how they would react to my probing. Poking around buildings at random might cause unnecessary problems, and I wanted to avoid that if possible. The Martial Peak's Outer Sect's Technique Hall wasn't much different from any of the others I had visited. It contained rows of bookshelves and desks, and an elder watched over everything to ensure no one caused any problems. The only thing that set it apart was that there were many more people here than I was used to. Over a dozen disciples were spread out around the room and studying various manuals. After checking my jade, the elder gave me a disgusted look, but he said nothing and allowed me to browse the library. My first stop was at the shelves containing cultivation techniques. I had already encountered many of these techniques in other libraries, but they did have one important manual that I had been hoping to find, a dual-element fire-earth technique. It was only low profound, and I might never use it, but it represented a huge boon for future potential research into creating a 3-element earth rank technique. After paying the required contribution points, I took the manual, sat down, and began reading it. Unexpectedly, this drew the attention of nearly everyone in the room. Evidently, it was uncommon for someone to purchase access to the profound rank techniques, and seeing an inner sect disciple in the outer sect technique hall was even more unusual. A big, muscular man lumbered over to me. "Who are you? I don't recognize you." Tapping into my aggression circuits, I gave him a disdainful look. "Oh? Should I take that to mean you are familiar with everyone in the inner sect?" He slammed a fist down on my desk in a poor attempt at frightening me.
This is our hall.
Get the hell back up the mountain and stop bothering us. The deacon in charge cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. This caused the burly man to back up a step. Even in his rage, he wasn't willing to break the sect's rules.
Let me guess.
You aren't capable enough to get into the inner sect's library, so you think you can come down here and avoid a fight.
Step outside.
Let me teach you exactly how bad of a decision that was. He punched his right fist into his left palm a few times in a gesture that I'm sure he felt was intimidating, but I just shook my head in derision. I looked at the man in Chi vision and saw that he was a Martial Master 7. I wasn't sure how my limited combat skills would fare against members of the Martial Peak, so I was slightly worried by his high level of cultivation, but his foundation was terrible. Even without knowing his cultivation technique, I could easily see that his meridians were poorly positioned, and they were so leaky that I doubted they would actually function as intended. Slapping down this idiot wouldn't be a problem, but he might have a powerful backer. If he had a boss with a solid foundation at Martial Master 9 or higher, I might be in trouble. So, while going outside and giving this fool a proper beat down might be satisfying, I needed to find an alternative approach to dealing with him. However, there was no reason to hurry. The sect's rules protected me while I remained in the library, and an annoying fly wouldn't stop me from copying down everything of value. After grabbing the rank 1 and 2 profound rank cultivation techniques, I swept through the fighting manuals and copied down everything I didn't already have. I also checked some of the manuals that were duplicates of ones I had gotten on the Alchemy Peak. I was slightly worried that the versions I had copied earlier had been tampered with in some way, but after carefully checking a few of them and finding no differences, I stopped worrying about this so much. After filling my mental library with everything that interested me, I stood up and stepped outside. By this point, dozens of cultivators had gathered to form a solid ring around the entrance of the technique hall. I had expected a few people to want to mess with me, but I was a little surprised that so many had decided to join in on the fun. However, after thinking about it, I realized that if nominal disciples could earn rewards by stealing an outer sect disciple's token, outer sect disciples were probably rewarded for stealing the token of an inner sect disciple. Most of these people likely didn't care at all that I had used their technique hall. Instead, they were here to earn rewards. The brute who challenged me in the technique hall was the first to lumber forward. "You finally came out. Ready to be taught a lesson." I held up a hand and smiled at him.
"Not quite yet. Give me one moment."
I then used a rank 2 movement technique to flash outside of the circle quicker than anyone could react. While I might have been able to use this technique to escape my pursuers and quickly make my way to the entrance of the inner sect, that would have been a risk. This technique was only intended for short bursts of movement and consumed a large amount of chi. Without knowing the extent of this group's capabilities, using my energy in such a way would be dangerous. So, instead of making my way out of town, I simply flashed to the entrance of the mission hall and ducked inside. Like with the technique hall, no one would be able to cause any problems inside. The mission hall on the Martial Peak was similar to the pill hall on the Alchemy Peak. The room was filled with bulletin boards that listed a variety of missions of various types and difficulties, and directly across from the entrance was a long desk where busy receptionists greeted sect members and recorded who had accepted which missions. As soon as I entered, I walked straight to a waiting receptionist and handed her my identity Jade. "I would like to place some missions." She gave me a strange look.
"Place?"
"Yes, let's say 2, I want to place 2 missions."
"Sir, you cannot."
"I'm from the Alchemy Peak. As I understand it, I'm allowed to place missions here, correct?" This caused her eyes to widen.
Yes.
"What missions would you like to create?" "First, I want to hire a group of high-level masters who can safely escort me to the entrance of the inner sect. I will offer 10 high-purity Meridian Builder pills of the highest quality for this. However, the failure penalty should be 100,000 contribution points. Escort to the inner sect? But that's..." She looked at me with a confused expression as she spoke.
"Yes, that's all.
1 group escort, 10 pills. While I was pretty sure I could make it there on my own, there was little downside to paying for an escort. I had pills to spare, so using a few to stop anyone from causing me additional headaches was a worthwhile investment. After just staring at me for several seconds, she finally responded. "Yes, I'll confirm this mission." I handed over the necessary pills and then told her the next mission I wanted to post. "Second, I want to offer a mission for a friendly spar. Anyone who accepts this mission must be at least a Martial Master 7, and they should be someone currently in the city. For accepting this mission, I'll offer 2 rank 2 healing pills. If I am defeated, I'll award the victor with 5 rank 2 Meridian Builder pills. Aspar, she began writing but paused upon hearing my details.
Sir. No failure penalty there, right? That's a problem.
Let's say. This is supposed to be a friendly spar. If anyone who accepts this mission decides to cause trouble for me afterward, the mission will be considered a failure. The penalty will be 100,000 contribution points.
How about that?
This, after hesitating, she finally began writing again. I can't make that mission. The penalty is too steep for the reward offered.
Oh?
Then raise the reward for defeating me to 10 pills. That works, right? She reluctantly dropped her head.
Yes, sir. Great.
Then let's get these missions posted. Outside, the crowd had grown even larger. It seemed that once people started gathering, everyone in the area wanted to come and join in on the fun. The moment I opened the door to leave, the burly man growled and began marching up to me.
Enough.
Time for your lesson. I remained in an open doorway so that he couldn't do anything rash and raised a hand to stop him.
One moment.
I looked around at the crowd. I have just posted 2 missions. I believe their rewards will satisfy everyone here. This caused people in the crowd to start shouting and confusion.
A mission?
How can you post a mission? He's an alky? A damn alky was stealing our techniques. The crowd became much more hostile at this revelation, so I backed up into the mission hall and gestured for everyone to come inside. I'll just wait in here for someone to accept my mission then. This caused most people in the crowd to begin looking around uneasily at their compatriots. Almost no one was willing to be the first to move, but the burly man just gave me a menacing look and stomped his way into the hall. Let's take a look at these missions of yours. He first picked up the posting for an escort, and upon reading it, he growled. I could see his hand twitch to crumple it up, but he refrained. That would have been a huge breach of the mission hall's rules. So, he had to settle for giving me an evil glare. No one's taking this mission, coward. I just smirked and waved his comment away.
I can wait.
After that, he picked up the mission for Aspar and started laughing.
Yes. I'll accept.
Let's do this. He walked toward me like he wanted to hurl me outside, but I pointed to the counter. Go officially sign up first.
Of course, young master.
We should do this properly. A grin was plastered to his face as he handed over his jade to sign up for the mission. Then, he came back to me and gestured welcomingly at the door.
Shall we?
We walked outside together and were instantly surrounded. The burly man shouted and started shoving people away.
Back off. He's mine.
I looked around the crowd and gave everyone what I thought was a calming smile.
Don't worry.
If anyone wants to fight, all you have to do is sign up for the mission. Just let me finish this one first, okay? The crowd fell into a stunned silence, but it didn't last long as the burly man charged me. I could have met him strength against strength, but I wasn't confident in doing so. Without knowing anything about his blessing or which techniques he knew, a direct conflict, even against a marital master, was risky. There were several metal techniques in the sex library for temporarily enhancing a person's bodily power, and I didn't have anything equivalent for use with fire chi. However, I had learned several fire-based movement techniques. The flashing I had used previously was one of the more powerful ones, but it took too much energy. Instead, I simply focused on increasing my speed to cleanly dodge every punch he threw. As I did so, I kept my chi vision running to watch for any techniques he might try to use to surprise me. The burly man couldn't land even a single attack, and as the fight wore on, he became enraged. Do you only know how to dodge? If you're a man, stand still and fight me. His shout shocked me enough that I paused my movements momentarily. I looked at him with scorn.
Are you a child?
Why would I just let you hit me?
How dare you?
He lunged at me, and it appeared as if he had been utterly consumed by his rage. As he closed, I dodged his punch, but it had just been a feint. He pivoted on his right leg and swung at me with his left. However, I had been ready for this attack and was able to narrowly slip past it. This left the burly man completely exposed, so I swung a chi-empowered fist right at his solar plexus. The brute was blasted backward and collapsed to the ground. Thanks for the spar. I looked around at the crowd.
Anyone else?
After the first man fell, several more stepped up to challenge me. They wanted to fight immediately, but I made sure that they all went through the mission hall to make sure that there would be no problems in the future. While not everyone was happy with this, the promise of 10 Meridian Builder pills if they won was more than enough encouragement to ensure everything went smoothly. I sparred with these random cultivators for nearly half a day. None of those who stepped forward were particularly powerful, so I could have just used my higher cultivation base to suppress them, but my focus was on honing my martial skills. A couple of times, I lost a bout because my opponent was a better fighter than me, and when the people surrounding us saw the payout these winners received, dozens more combatants stepped forward to accept my challenge. This gave me a chance to practice nearly all the fire-based martial skills I had learned, and it gave me a lot more confidence in my ability to defend myself in the future. Finally, a group of people stepped forward to put an end to the fighting before anyone else could challenge me. Their leader looked me up and down with a faint smirk on his face. "Hey, are you the one looking for an escort to the intersect?" This question brought me out of my battle frenzy.
Oh.
Yes, that's me. Are you ready to go?
The leader nodded. Let's go.
Our trip to the intersect didn't take too long, only about 15 minutes. Earlier, the receptionist was trying to stop me from creating this mission, since she must have known how short it would be. After all the sparring, it seemed less likely that anyone would cause trouble for me, so I may have been able to make the trip alone without any problems, but I didn't regret this small expenditure. My guards ensured the trip was smooth, and paying for them didn't cost me anything of real value. When we reached the opening to the lower mountain, I handed them each an extra bottle of pills. "Thanks for the help." The leader smiled as he accepted my pills.
No problem.
"Let us know if you have any more well-paying jobs in the future." The group laughed as they walked away, and I knew that they were mocking me, but really, what did it matter? I got what I needed to go, and I gave them things that I didn't. After they left, I stepped through the opening in the wall and entered the intersect. Like before, neither a gate nor guards checked those who entered. A simple formation controlled who was allowed to enter or leave. However, upon entering the intersect, I was not alone. An older servant disciple was standing there, waiting for me. "Alchemist Disciple Su?" Slightly confused, I nodded.
Yeah.
"Disciple Su, the elder has been waiting for you for several hours.
Please follow me."
My eyes narrowed at the mention of an elder. I had no idea why an elder would be waiting for me on the martial peak, but I chose to follow him instead of insulting an elder by refusing. "Which elder is waiting for me?"
Elder Tion.
"He is very eager to meet you." At the mention of Elder Tion, my mind went to Tian Lei. Did Tian Lei want to meet me for some reason?
Why?
Seeing a possible gain beyond mere techniques, I walked with anxious anticipation as I was guided to our meeting. The intersect was quite different from those areas below it. The lower mountain was covered in dense bamboo forests, and as we walked, the breaks in the foliage gave me glimpses of the small cottages hidden within. We walked along a dirt path that meandered through this overgrown bamboo, and only brief streaks of light were able to pierce through its canopy to illuminate the world around us. If someone wanted to stage an ambush, this would be the perfect place to do it. However, the serenity of the intersect seemed to preclude any such possibility. We took a turn onto a narrow branch path and passed under a short arch. This led us to a modest, wood-frame building with white paper walls. Its roof was covered in wooden shingles, and small gold-painted ornaments could be seen decorating its ridges. When we reached the door, the servant disciple I was following opened it and gestured for me to enter. The room inside was small, but it was tastefully appointed. Various poems written in a grass script were hanging on the walls, and in the center of the room, a man who looked to be the same age as me sat at a small wooden table. The servant disciple guided me to sit and then poured a small cup of tea for both of us. I looked at the man across from me and instantly recognized him as Tian Lei. "Welcome, I am Elder Tianhua. I am glad we are finally able to meet." Why did this man want to meet with me? I couldn't think of any reason except that I had seen him in previous loops. If he were somehow also retaining memories of those loops, this could be a disaster. I cupped my hands to him in a martial salute. "Elder, how may I be of service?" Tian Lei took a sip of tea as he looked at me. "Elder who has mentioned you several times. He says that you've been able to provide a substantial number of pills to the sect master. From what I have been told, you are able to produce that at a rate several times that of any other disciple, and you use some of the cheapest herbs available to do so. While we wouldn't dare covet anything belonging to the sect master, we would be interested in having you make some pills for us as well." This wasn't the direction I expected this conversation to take, but I wasn't completely surprised by it. While my alchemy activities had been rather private, my actions over the last 30 years could not be completely hidden. The other factions had to know at least a bit about what had been going on. I bowed my head slightly. "Elder, I don't know if that will be possible. I have commitments to the defenders of the mountains. I am not against the idea of making pills for others, but my energy is limited." This made him smile. "Of course, we can't allow you to neglect the sect master. However, we have a proposal which you might find interesting." I cocked my head in consideration.
"I'm listening."
While I was currently working for the eyes, I didn't mind helping the tigers. In truth, I was willing to help whoever gave me the most benefits. If that was the tigers, so be it. Right now, You are a Martial Grandmaster 5. Due to your age, it will soon be significantly more difficult for you to advance. We are willing to help you with this, as long as you are willing to help us.
I blinked in surprise. How? Pills.
We have access to a special herb, the Fire Dragon's Tongue Fruit, which will allow you to craft a rank 3 pill capable of significantly boosting your fire affinity. The duration of this boost is rather short, but it should be enough to help you advance. This ingredient is rather rare, and the quality of our supply is quite poor, but we are willing to trade 5 sets of ingredients in exchange for half of your future production. I immediately wanted to accept the offer. I saw no real downside to it. If this deal would allow me to advance to peak Grandmaster, I wanted to accept it immediately. However, doing so was a bit problematic. I wasn't sure how the eyes would react if I suddenly started giving the tigers so many pills. The struggles between these two factions didn't matter to me, but pills to increase my cultivation base didn't mean much if I couldn't survive long enough to use them. How will the sect master react? Tianlei tipped his teacup in my direction. He has already agreed. As long as you're willing, you can accept this deal without fear of reprisal. Did the eyes expect my production to more than double after I reached peak Grandmaster? That was possible. While I didn't gain much immediately after an advancement, I was able to slowly improve my efficiency over time. That was the only reason I could see for them being okay with this deal, but there could have been more going on beneath the surface. Sect politics aside, this was a good deal for me.
I'm in.
Tianlei flashed a toothy smile. We will have the ingredients delivered to you as soon as you return home. I assume you're planning to visit the Inner Sect Technique Hall.
If I'm allowed. Of course.
Please don't let me keep you. He waved a hand to dismiss me, but this meeting presented me with an opportunity to learn more about the time loop. I didn't want to waste it. Before I go, can I ask you about your blessing? I've heard a lot about it. Tianlei's cheek twitched slightly in annoyance, but he nodded his head graciously.
Oh? What have you heard?
Just that it's an extremely powerful fire ability. I've not seen anyone use a combat-focused blessing before, so I wanted to know more about it. Suddenly, Tianlei's arms exploded in flames nearly 3 feet high. He turned his head and looked deep into these flames.
They are beautiful, aren't they?
I couldn't help but stare at the dancing fire.
Yes.
How does it compare to others? Have you ever fought anyone with a lightning or ice-based blessing? There have been a few. No one with lightning, but I have sparred with a few warriors with ice blessings. Nothing has ever been able to withstand my flames. His expression didn't betray any hint that he had previously had a different blessing or that he had chosen a fire blessing specifically. From what I could tell from his behavior, as far as he was concerned, this was the only blessing he had ever been given. He could have been acting, but I felt that everything had gone too far for that. If he remembered the loops and having different blessings, why the act? Something else had to be going on. If Tianlei was unaware of the situation, why was his blessing changing? There was only one possibility left in my mind. A being that had called itself the incarnation of the earthly Tao had once told me that it had been the one to give me my blessing. This incarnation was likely also the one giving Tianlei his blessing. But why was it making these changes? Dismissing these thoughts for the moment, I turned my attention back to the elder, cupped my fists, and gave a slight bow.
Thank you, elder.
I won't disturb you any further. After leaving Tianlei's house, the servant disciple who guided me earlier took me to the Inner Sect Technique Hall. Either because of my deal with Tianlei or simply because I was an Inner Sect disciple in the Inner Sect Hall, no one came to cause me any trouble during my stay in this library. After recording everything I needed, I left and made my way back to the Alchemy Peak. With the deal in place to provide pills to the Martial Peak, I buckled down and got to work concocting. The ingredients that the elder promised me were delivered before I even arrived home, but I didn't plan to put them to immediate use. I wanted to study them first to ensure that nothing was wasted. On the promised day, Jiao came to take me for my evaluation to become an elder. I was taken to the peak of the mountain, where a massive cathedral-like structure had been erected. It was dozens of meters wide, and there were 2 rows of columns in front of the entrance. Each column had been carved with scenes depicting great battles where Qilins, dragons, and phoenixes fought against Taotais, Taoists, and Qiankis. Instead of passing through the main entrance of this building, Jiao took me to a side door that led to a modestly sized room where 3 elders sat upon cushioned chairs. The man in the middle seat waved for me to stand in front of them. Su Feng, you are now 60 years old, and your cultivation base has only reached Martial Grandmaster 5. We have unanimously agreed that you do not meet the qualifications to become an elder. At this point, the man on the right began to speak. I recognized him as Elder Hu. While I have my reservations, we have agreed to appoint you to the position of Inner Sect Deacon. We hope that you will dedicate yourself to this position and use it to provide guidance to our young disciples. Finally, the man on the left, Elder Long, began to speak. As an inner sect deacon, you may choose up to 3 nominal disciples to be your personal disciples. Using your own contribution points, you may purchase techniques and items for them. To repay this, they will provide you with a portion of the pills they produce, which you can then sell back to the section. However, you must refrain from using any form of coercion during these transactions. I gave them a deep bow. Thank you, elders. The elder in the middle shooed me away with a wave of his hand. You may leave. With that, Jiao guided me out and back down the mountain. I was extremely surprised by my appointment to the inner sect. From previous conversations, I had expected to only become an outer sect deacon. I had to assume that my deal with Tianlei had played a large part in this decision. I would need to be careful, but hopefully, this partnership would provide me with what I needed to both advance my cultivation base and gather important information. Over the following years, I considered accepting a few personal disciples, but I never did. I liked the idea of taking a talentless youth, teaching them everything I knew, and watching what they became, but being stuck in an endless time loop, this felt hollow. When I died, they would disappear, and all the effort I put into teaching them would vanish. While I had a desire to form this kind of connection, until I was able to bring people back in time with me, either through the use of my storage space or through some other means, it would have to remain a dream for the future. Instead, I spent my time mastering everything the sect could teach me about rank 3 alchemy and pushing my cultivation base to peak grandmaster. With my limited affinities, neither task was simple. One thing that kept alchemy interesting was that there were always new techniques to explore. While the improvements to the quality of my pills were marginal, only an extra 1 or 2 points to efficacy, those small improvements represented an extreme level of refinement in my use of various techniques and ability to control my qi. My ability to squeeze an extra point or 2 of efficacy out of a pill that was already highly optimized meant that I would have a huge advantage when I began learning rank 4 alchemy. The difficulties I faced with cultivation, however, were meaningless challenges with little reward. While gathering qi for regular use became easier and faster with more practice and a higher cultivation base, gathering enough energy for a breakthrough became needlessly difficult after stagnation began setting in when I turned 60. Thankfully, Elder Tian had fulfilled our agreement and provided me with 5 fire dragon's tongue fruits. Using them as the main ingredient, I was able to concoct 5 rank 3 fire affinity boosting pills. The effect of those pills didn't last long, so I could only use them at a critical moment during each breakthrough, but they provided just enough of a boost to allow me to continue advancing. At 80 years old, I was a Martial Grandmaster 9, and my cultivation base began to calcify. After that, advancement became nearly impossible. It was only after consuming a copious amount of pills and more than a decade of hard work that I was finally able to lumber my way to Martial Grandmaster peak. At age 92, I had accomplished nearly everything I wanted out of this life. I was ready for what came next. After advancing to peak Grandmaster, I only had 1 month or so before the deadly attack on the Su clan, so I began using my agreement with the Tigers as a pretext to get into contact with more people from that faction. When I had learned that Tianlei was a tiger, I started to think that the attack on the Su clan might be some kind of coordinated effort involving the entire faction. So, as the date of the attack approached, I had regular conversations with the faction's members to try and tease out any information I knew about the faction's plans for the near future. I heard a lot from them about how the Su clan had been oppressing the other nobles in the wastes, and since it was generally assumed that I was a discarded member of the clan, they felt free to share their grievances with me. Everyone was willing to tell me just how much they hated the Su clan, but at no point did anybody even hint at an imminent plan to take revenge. I continued probing for additional information for several weeks with no luck, but only a few days before I expected the attack to take place, Elder Tian came to see me. After a series of pleasantries, he got to his reason for visiting me. Deacon Su, you've been in the sect now for nearly 80 years. Do you remember much about your life before coming here? Knowing that he was about to launch a full-scale attack against the Su clan, my mind raced to try and figure out how I should handle this conversation.
A little.
Why do you ask? He steepled his hands and looked at me with a sharp, appraising glare. Were you a member of the Su clan? I couldn't help but swallow involuntarily. No, Elder, not exactly. My father was, but he was expelled from the clan when he was young. He died when I was only 8. Before that, he did tell me a little about them. But I don't remember much. Only that he had a deep grudge against them. After speaking, I realized how suspicious my answers sounded. I could only rely on the fact that he shouldn't know that I knew about his attack to keep me safe. Without that knowledge, he shouldn't have any reason to suspect me of anything. Tianlei's eyes narrowed as he looked at me. And what are your thoughts about the Su clan? I don't have much knowledge of them, Elder. But based on what other disciples have told me, they seem extremely tyrannical.
He nodded slowly. Yes.
They have been suppressing anyone who might challenge their rule for far too long, but that should end soon. He seemed to hesitate about whether or not to say more, but in the end, he must have decided against it.
Thank you for your time, Deacon.
We'll talk more in the future. I wasn't sure if he had been deciding to eliminate me or if he had been deciding whether he should recruit me. In the end, it didn't really matter. I had no desire to be a part of his plot. I already knew what was going to happen, and now I had a pretty good understanding of why. The only things left to find out were how the attack would take place and what the aftermath would be. In these circumstances, the best thing to do was watch from the sidelines.
The next week was quiet.
I expected the lead up to the attack would see a lot of activity within and around the sect, but to my surprise, everything seemed completely normal. It wasn't until the morning of the 8th day after my discussion with Tian Lei that a servant disciple came to my house and informed me that I was required to attend a meeting in the Grand Hall, the building where I received my promotion to deacon. That morning, the mountain was unusually subdued. There were no disciples out and about studying or worrying about concocting their next pill. It seemed that either everyone had already been informed of what happened at the Su clan, or they could simply sense the tense atmosphere. While I had yet to hear any news about the attack, I didn't doubt that others would be able to get insider information from their factions. As I walked up the mountain to the Grand Hall, a long line of deacons and elders followed alongside me. This was the first time I fully realized just how many of us there were. In just the small section of the trail that I could see, there were dozens of grandmasters trudging up the mountain. At the hall, we did not go into the side door that I had used previously. Everyone went in through the main entrance. Inside, there was a sunken amphitheater with rows of seats in a horseshoe shape. The elders were seated in the lowest level, inner sect deacons were seated in the middle levels, and outer sect deacons were seated in the top levels. Every seat was positioned so that it faced a dais in the middle of the room that held 3 ornate chairs, the middle of which was sitting atop a pedestal. After the elders and deacons were all seated, 3 men walked out from a screen behind the dais and sat upon the chairs. The left chair was taken by Deputy Sect Master Tan, the head of the Alchemy Peak. I didn't recognize the other 2, but it was easy enough to guess that the man on the right was the Deputy Sect Master in charge of the Martial Peak. The man in the middle had to be the master of the Twin Mountains sect. After they were seated, Sect Master Tan cleared his throat to get our attention. As you may have heard, the Su clan has been attacked. What we know so far points to this being an internal coup. However, witness reports indicated that 4 outsiders participated in this attack. At these words, everyone became serious. No one seemed surprised, but everyone understood the gravity of this situation. The head of the Martial Peak continued where Sect Master Tan left off. All Su clan buildings in Dragon Gate City have been obliterated. Both their palace compound and their training complex have been demolished. From what we can tell, everyone inside these buildings at the time of the attack has perished. All that remains are open fields of scorched and blackened earth.
Then, the sect master spoke.
This is the gravest possible violation of the accords which govern the wastes. The Flowing Mountain sect, the Verdant Forest sect, and the Rising Sun Empire will all be sending forces to investigate and punish the perpetrators. The Blue Wind Pavilion, as arbiter of the accords, will have direct authority over all parties involved in this investigation. Investigators will enter our sect. Do nothing to impede them and keep all disciples on a short leash while they are here. We cannot give anyone grounds for accusing our sect of taking part in this attack. Murmurs of discontent sounded out when the idea of outsiders having free rein to investigate the sect was mentioned. Emboldened by the people around him, one of the outer sect deacons stood up and pounded a fist on the table in front of him. We cannot allow this. We can handle our own investigations. Send the outsiders away. This outburst caused the sect master's eyes to widen in anger. His face turned red, and he began shouting at the fool who contradicted him.
Quiet.
If anyone tries to block the investigation in any way, they will be put to death immediately. This is not a joke. The very existence of this sect and the lives of everyone here are at stake. If anything goes wrong, no one will be able to escape execution. As fear began to fill the room, Sect Master Tan spoke up again. We have already met with the leaders of each of our sect's factions, and we are confident that none of them were involved in this attack. While we have not spoken to all of the independent elders, we have no reason to suspect any of them were involved either. Our sect had no connection to this tragedy, so there is no reason for us to worry. Just cooperate with the investigators and provide them with any assistance they require. Finally, the sect master gave one last command. Until this situation has been resolved, we must seal the mountain. No one is allowed in or out without the express permission of the sect masters, and any such traffic will be recorded and reported to the investigation team.
Dismissed.
Over the next few days, a semblance of normalcy returned to the sect, but it was shattered when the investigators arrived. 4 dozen peak grandmasters swarmed the sect in search of any information related to the attack. I did my best to keep a low profile. I had most of the information they wanted, and if I were interrogated, I wasn't sure that I would be able to hide it. Simply telling them everything I knew could have led to interesting results, but I wanted to see what happened without my intervention. So, I did my best to avoid being questioned. The focus of the investigation was on people with powerful fire abilities. The Su clan had been turned into a smoldering wreck, and that meant that a fire cultivator or someone with a potent fire blessing was involved. Typically, the sect wouldn't ask any questions about a person's blessings and affinities. They didn't care about such things. The methods used for selecting and promoting disciples were purely sink or swim. One only needed to be good at either alchemy or fighting to become a member of the sect. However, during this investigation, everyone was required to report both their blessing and their fire affinity. Not only that, but their blessings also had to be demonstrated to the investigators. I told them that my blessing had given me a fire seed. At this point, it was public enough knowledge, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to hide it from the investigators. However, while having a fire seed might make me a target of greed, I wasn't worried about it implicating me in the attack. The cold mountain fire couldn't cause the kind of destruction that was reported. It wouldn't scorch the earth, so it wouldn't make me a suspect. The only danger I might face would be if someone accused me of being involved in the attack in an attempt to steal my seed. If that happened, I would need to pop a poison pill to escape. I was questioned a couple of times, but they only asked me rudimentary questions. I was in the sect during the attack, and that was easy enough to verify. If they believed that I was connected with any of their suspects, there was no sign of it during this questioning. Since I was keeping my distance, I didn't know what the investigators found or didn't find, but after a week of searching, they left. Everyone was shaken by the experience. It showed us exactly what our place was in the world. If outsiders decided we needed to be searched, we would be searched, and there wasn't a thing we could do to stop them. No one liked this fact, but the worst thing was that there was nothing we could do to change it. Thankfully, as the days passed, things slowly returned to an illusion of normalcy. My life continued on as normal for the next month, and it felt as if the attack on the Su clan had never happened. However, when I was doing alchemy in my workshop one day, a voice boomed across the entire sect and crushed the hopes of everyone who thought that we had escaped the investigation unscathed. Twin Mountains sect, you have been found guilty of training and harboring the criminals Tian Ho, Wang Suping, Wang Sufei, and Du Ranjing. For this crime, the sect shall be abolished, and all members shall be put to death as proof that justice has been carried out. What happened next could not be described as killing a chicken to scare a monkey. It was more akin to slaughtering a herd to eradicate a disease. From my position in the faction enclave, I could see tens of thousands of warriors encircling both mountains of the sect. As I watched, their formation slowly closed in around the base of each mountain simultaneously. It was difficult for me to see what was happening around the Martial Peak, but I could see those around the Alchemy Peak clearly enough. The first target of our attackers was the city of the nominal disciples. As the circle of warriors closed in upon it, a line of cultivators broke off to wrap around the city and form a barrier to stop anyone from escaping. However, the attackers didn't bother entering the city to fight people man to man. Instead, they sent out massive waves of energy that rippled out of their formation and tore apart the buildings one by one. Large apartment buildings collapsed like they were built out of mud and rotten sticks. These attacks didn't consist of just a single element. There were bursts of all 5 basic elements. Gouts of fire, blasts of ice, giant slashes from invisible swords, huge swaths of earth overturned, and creeping vines attacked both structures and humans alike, but these attacks formed only a portion of the onslaught. Buildings were also struck by thick columns of lightning, hurricane-force winds, and other attacks I couldn't even see. I had never seen the warriors from the sect's Martial Peak fight, and I didn't know if they were able to cause this level of devastation, but this was far beyond what I had imagined a Grandmaster was capable of. If a Grandmaster could easily destroy a building single-handedly, what might a Lord, King, or Emperor be able to do? The encroaching army had paused their march toward the mountain as the city of the nominal disciples was attacked. They wanted us to watch, to bear witness to their vengeance. It was hard to see too many details from my vantage point high atop the mountain, but even as far away as I was, I could still hear the screaming as 100,000 souls met their end. They knew they were doomed. They had no way to defend themselves, no way to fight back. All they could do was wait to be slaughtered. As building after building was demolished, slowly, trickles of blood that turned into small rivers began flowing down the streets. While I hadn't known that this attack was coming, I was prepared. I had long ago placed everything I needed in my storage space, read all the sect's technique manuals that I could, and pushed my alchemy skills to their limits. I was ready, but I didn't want to die immediately. The longer I survived, the more I would learn. At this point, anything I learned might be of dubious value, but I still wanted to learn what I could. Staying in my workshop gained me nothing, and going down the mountain was just another form of suicide. Part of me wanted to attempt to steal another copy of the Cold Mountain Fire, but the Ring of Warriors had already blocked off the entrance to its cave. So, with no better options, I decided to go up the mountain and visit Grand Hall. If anyone in the sect knew anything, that was where they would be. The paths up the mountain were crowded with frantic people scrambling to get to its peak. Everyone seemed to have the same idea: get to the hall and ask the sect master what to do. Even if they knew he couldn't do anything about this calamity, it was the only thing people could think to do. Just outside the Grand Hall, I saw someone who had faded from my life over the past couple of decades, Elder Jiao. She was in a frantic state. I had become used to seeing her as a proper, composed elder. She had become the epitome of a well-groomed and well-dressed lady. Now, though, her hair was in a tangled mess and her robes were dirty and disordered.
Jiao, what's going on?
Do you know why they're attacking us?
What? Who are? Fong.
Deacon Su, her eyes were wild, and she was shaking. The sect master is gone, and all of the top elders have vanished. No one knows what happened.
We've been abandoned.
Where did they go? I was shocked that the leaders would disappear.
What did that mean?
If the entire sect was to be held liable for Tianlei's actions, shouldn't they be the first on the chopping block? Perhaps they were. They might have been taken away weeks ago.
We don't know.
They may have been taken, or they may have escaped. Those bastards had to know this was coming. They knew, and they abandoned us to save themselves. Panic had set in, and Jiao wasn't the only one feeling it. High atop the mountain, as everyone came to realize that the leaders of the sect were gone, people were going crazy. If this had been my only life, I might have joined them.
Elder Jiao.
I tried to speak in a calm, soothing voice.
What do we do now? We just need a plan.
What are we going to do? There's nothing we can do. As she screamed, her facade of being a lofty sect elder vanished entirely. I gripped her shoulders to try and steady her.
We can fight.
We can defend ourselves. She laughed mirthlessly in my face. No one here knows anything about fighting.
We wouldn't stand a chance.
What about the illusion formation? There are illusions guarding the sect from outsiders. That should slow them down, right? Those were built by the Flowing Mountain sect. They were disabled before this attack even began. Jiao collapsed on the ground and started crying, but she wasn't alone. Left with no other option, others also began falling to their knees in defeat. As Jiao sat there, sobbing, her demeanor slowly shifted from grief and terror to utter desperation. I know what comes next. I won't let that happen. She stood up and looked around. Spotting a small outcropping that stuck out over the mountain, Jiao began to run and didn't stop. With all the speed she could manage, she threw herself off the cliff. I only stood there and watched.
I could have stopped her.
I could have saved her life. I had martial techniques that would have allowed me to move far quicker than she was running, but I just watched. I knew what she was afraid of. While I didn't know what it was like to be a woman in this world, I knew what happened to women in most wars, and so did Jiao. This was her choice to make. I couldn't stop the oncoming army, so I wouldn't stop her. Would such a fall kill a martial grandmaster?
Normally, maybe not.
But as she was falling, Jiao severed her meridians and dispersed her qi. When she hit the ground, she was no different than an average mortal. I stepped up to the edge of the cliff and looked down. I didn't focus on the broken body below. I looked only at the army making their slow march toward the peak. The sect village had already been overrun, and all that was left before the oncoming tide was the mountain itself. I expected the advance to slow significantly at this point. The mountain paths were narrow, and there was no way to march an entire army up them. I thought that if people made a concerted effort, they might be able to form last stands at the various choke points.
I was wrong. As the army approached, the earth moved. New paths and stairways appeared out of nowhere as if welcoming the invaders in. In Qi vision, I saw thick streamers of earth Qi carving up the entire mountain at a frantic pace. This wasn't the effort of just a few individuals. Platoons of earth cultivators rotated one after the next to quickly construct a path forward. The army's advance was not quick, but it was relentless. Enclave after enclave was wiped out until only the peak remained. Should I have used my last moments to turn around, run into the Grand Hall, and look for things to steal? Maybe, but my storage space was already full, and I didn't want to make any mistakes by swapping out items at random. There might have been valuable technique manuals that I could have found and copied into my mental library, but I lacked the concentration necessary to read them with enough care to ensure that any copies I made were free of errors. So, with no way to carry any potential loot into a future loop, I just stood there and waited for the advancing soldiers. I couldn't fight an army,
but I wanted to see how I fared against an experienced soldier. I had only trained my martial arts in private, and I had only sparred with significantly weaker opponents. How did my skills compare to someone who had actively trained in the martial Dao? When the first enemy crested the cliff face, I charged. My goal was to knock him back. I would use a technique to send a burst of chi which should have a strong enough force to blow him away. I channeled my chi and sent it out. The soldier's face showed no reaction. He just swiped his arm and let loose his chi. It wasn't a type I recognized, but it instantly dispersed the energy I had sent at him and created a gust of wind that threw me to the ground. As I struggled to get to my feet, another soldier walked forward and stabbed me in the gut. His attack destroyed my dantian, crippling my cultivation, and severed my spine so that I couldn't move. He didn't kill me instantly though. He left me there so that I could watch as the army moved forward and dispatched the remaining sect members one by one. As I lay dying, I looked out over the cliff and down at the ruins where the Twin Mountains sect had once stood. A member of the sect had destroyed the Su clan. In retaliation, the entire sect was laid to waste. I could understand the actions of Tian Lei. He wanted more power for his family. For his clan to rise, the Su clan had to fall. I didn't agree with what he did, but I could understand it. There was just no way that he could have understood the magnitude of the firestorm his actions would unleash. After the sect was destroyed, I did not doubt that the families of those who had participated in the attack would meet a similar end. I could also understand the response of the powers that destroyed the sect. Someone in the sect broke a pact that all powers involved abided by. As a result, the sect had to face swift punishment. If they didn't, then no such agreements would have any teeth. Again, I didn't necessarily agree with their actions, but I could understand them. There was one thing that troubled me though. There was one aspect of all this destruction that I couldn't quite understand. There was only one place I could turn to for an answer. Did I need the answer? No. But I wanted to understand. System, the blessing Tian Lei receives has changed multiple times. It looks like it is being adjusted to be as destructive as possible. This is the work of the earthly Dao, right? Why is the earthly Dao working so hard to destroy everything? Calculating. The cost of the information is, discount applied, cost 0 credits. Purchase confirmed. Suddenly, a voice echoed in my head. It was one that I hadn't heard in a long time. It was the voice of the incarnation of the earthly Dao. Stagnation. This entire place has stagnated. To better this world, all beings must strive to advance. The accords protecting this area made everything far too peaceful. Will this war change things? I do not know. You have yet to live long enough for me to see the effects of my efforts here. Until then, I can only work on making this conflict itself as momentous as possible. It made sense. It was ruthless and cruel, but I could understand it. Years ago, Elder Mu had told me, nothing matters unless it helps me reach my goal. If you get in the way, I will kill you. This was the exact same logic. The earthly Dao wanted the world to advance, and the people here got in its way. Could I stop it? Could I prevent this tragedy from happening? Possibly. I could try to stop Tian Lei early on, before he gained any strength. If someone else rose to take his place, I could gain enough strength to stop them too. But that would be putting myself directly at odds with the Dao. It wanted this to happen. If I tried to stop this attack, I would be the one standing in the way. I owed the people of the sect a debt. For all that I had been used to further the goals and schemes of others, they had taught me earnestly and had provided me with a vast amount of knowledge and guidance. That was something I would need to repay. I was not willing to oppose the earthly Dao, but I would find a way to repay all my debts. I just needed to gather the strength and knowledge necessary to do so first. With a final gasp, I slipped away into unconsciousness. You have died. Calculating. You died as a martial grandmaster peak. 1 million credits awarded. Total credits, 1,790,000. Below is information that is found in Volume 1 or was used to inform prices therein. There are a few spoilery things. Before the tables, I want to quickly repost something from my Chapter 45 author's note to make it a little more visible since I've learned that it is possible to disable the notes. Chapters 1 to 15 underwent major revision on March 24th. The changes shouldn't have much effect going forward, they were mainly to clean up the first arc, but here are the key takeaways. Spoiler. Known tiers of cultivation. Warrior tier, ruler tier. Tier. Martial disciple, martial lord, martial sovereign. Martial master, martial king. Martial grandmaster, martial emperor. Credits gained upon death for each known cultivation level. Martial disciple credits awarded, martial master credits awarded, martial grandmaster credits awarded. 110 1 1000 1 100,000. 222 2000 2 200,000. 333 3000 3 300,000. 444 4000 4 400,000. 555 5000 5 500,000. 666 6000 6 600,000. 777 7000 7 700,000. 888 8000 8 800,000. 999 9000 9 900,000. Peak 110 10,000 Peak 1 million. Half Step Master 200 Peak 20,000 False Lord 2 million. The cost of increasing affinities for the 5 basic elements. Note: prices are cumulative. You can't just purchase Peak 7, you have to purchase every step before it too. Basic affinity permanent cost temporary cost. 9 asterisk low 110. Mid 250 25. High 550. Peak 750 75. 8 asterisk low 1100. Mid 2500 250. High 5500. Peak 7500 750. 7 asterisk low 10,000 1000. Mid 25,000 2500. High 50,000 5000. Peak 75,000 7500. Miscellaneous items. Knowledge cost. General knowledge priced based on the effect it will have on the world. Note: asking seemingly unrelated questions that tell you something important will cost the same or more than simply asking for that important information directly. Both ways of asking questions result in the same effect on the world, so the price is the same. Western Han language 100. Item cost. Rank 1 minor healing pill 10. Rank 1 minor healing pill, recurring, 200. Rank 1 minor strengthening pill 25. Storage bag, 10 m cubed 1000. Sufong storage space 30 m per m cubed. Skill. Alchemy, Disciple Alchemist, 10 million. Alchemy, Master Alchemist, 10 billion. Appraisal, Rank 1 pills, limited 10. Appraisal, Rank 1 pills majority, 5000. Appraisal, Technique, LVL 5 of rank. Mental bookshelf, Rank 1, 1000. Mental bookshelf, additional ranks, X10. Mental journal, Rank 1, 100. Mental journal, additional ranks, X10. Mastery of a yellow rank fire seed 100,000. Mastery of a profound rank fire seed, limited, 5 million. Techniques cost. Rank 1 low yellow dash, mid yellow 200. Rank 1 mid yellow dash, high yellow 400. Rank 1 high yellow dash, peak yellow 700. Increased rank, disciple, master, etc., X 100. X. Rank 2 low yellow dash, mid yellow is equal to 200 times 10 2000. Increased power, yellow profound, earth, heaven X10. X. Rank 1 low profound dash, mid profound is equal to 200 times 120,000. X. Rank 3 mid profound dash, high profound equals 400 asterisk 100 asterisk 100 asterisk 1040 million. Multipliers refer to improvements of techniques of different levels. Upgrading profound techniques cost 10x the cost to improve when compared to yellow. They do not refer to improving a technique from yellow to profound. Rank 1 yellow change effect, with reference, 100. Increased rank X 100. Increased power X10. Rank 1 yellow change effect, no reference, 10,000. Increased rank X 100. Increased power X10. After I died in the attack on the Twin Mountain sect, I woke up in my tiny house inside the Sioux clan with no desire to jump right back into the meat grinders that were my lives. My last life was the first one that felt like a real, full lifetime. I had lived to a similar age in the past, but those lives were like shadow plays where every day blended into the next. This past life had been a complete experience. I needed to take some time to breathe and assess everything that happened. I made extraordinary gains, both in knowledge and credits, and it would take time to work out how I wanted to move forward. I only had a few hours until someone from the clan came to take me to be tested, and I needed to prepare before that happened. How did I want to play this? Everything the clan did after the testing was based on my affinities. I had a mid 8-star fire affinity, low 8-star affinities in the other 4 basic elements, and 1,000,000 points to play with. I just wanted to be left alone for a short while to figure things out, and a good way to get that time was to appear to have no affinities. I could do what I had done in the past and pay for the system to hide them, but now that I had a little more understanding of the testing apparatus, I had another option. System, permanently raise all my basic affinities to mid 8-star. Permanent mid 8-star water, earth, wood, and metal affinities. Confirmed. Cost 10,000 credits. 990,290 credits remaining. Now I should appear completely worthless to the clan, which meant I would be thrown right back in here for a week without interruptions. I knew I would be summoned for testing soon, so I didn't bother diving too deeply into research. Instead, I spent the few hours I had organizing my thoughts. There were a few things I wanted to try now that I once again had a clean slate to work from. "What is your name?" asked the elderly man who always tested affinities.
Zhu Feng.
Place your hand on the orb and channel your chi into it. I channeled my chi into the orb, but only a flicker of chaotic lines appeared. I pushed harder, showing that I was trying, but nothing more happened. "Zero elemental affinity," the elderly man said. "What can you tell us about the blessing you have received?"
I don't know.
My body feels a little stronger, but that's all. The old man gave me a look, and I could feel energy from him lightly probe my body. After that, he nodded to the scribe. He will be given the Earth Heart mantra and returned to his original quarters. Returning to my house, I sat down and got to work. I had obtained a myriad of cultivation techniques in my last life, and I wanted to see what I could do with them. Most important to me were the 2 dual element techniques I had obtained. I had studied the wood-fire cultivation technique a bit in the past, and it had given me a few ideas. Put simply, a single element rank 1 technique floods all the muscles in a part of the body with chi of that element. This dual element technique sections off muscle groups, flooding some with fire chi and some with wood chi. There were 2 main things I wanted to look into. First, this technique was only mid-profound, and that seemed to be because it only provided limited chi purity. Could I adapt the filtering systems from a peak yellow technique and implant them into this one to make a peak profound technique? Second, this dual element technique divided the muscles into 2 groups. Could I divide them into 5 groups, creating a 5-element cultivation technique? While I believed a 5-element rank 1 technique should be possible for me to create, I was extremely doubtful I could make the rank 2 version. The rank 2 dual element techniques created separate meridians for both elements, so a 5-element technique would need separate channels for each element. That would be extremely complex to design. Still, the fact that I wasn't ready to begin with the rank 2 version wouldn't stop me from attempting a rank 1 version. First, I wanted to check on the pricing. System, how much to change this rank 1 mid-profound technique into a peak profound one? 11,000 credits. That was 10 times more than upgrading a mid-yellow to peak yellow. System, how much to change this rank 2 mid-profound technique into a peak profound one? 1,100,000 credits. Those 2 prices gave me the answer to my next question, but I wanted to ask it anyway. I took out the copy of the rank 3 dual element technique from my storage space. System, how much to change this rank 3 mid-profound technique into a peak profound one? 110 million credits. I was somewhat confident I could alter the rank 1 technique to become peak profound on my own, and I believed it should be possible to do the same for the rank 2 version, but I had no confidence at all in changing the rank 3 technique. I had several lifetimes of experience to draw on when working with rank 1 and 2 techniques, but only a single experience with rank 3, which made it much trickier. Upgrading rank 1 wouldn't do too much good unless I could upgrade all of them, but I didn't lose anything by trying. I wasn't willing to spend credits on this, however. Unless I could upgrade all 3 ranks, any upgrades could be more detrimental than helpful. By the end of the week, my experiments had hit a brick wall, and my cultivation base was a complete mess. I had quickly reached Martial Disciple 2 by practicing the basic wood-fire dual-element cultivation technique on my upper right arm. This was mainly to get a general feel for how the technique should work and try to see how I could go about changing it. Then, on my upper left arm, I switched to the Fire-Earth dual-element technique to see how that one worked. Having 2 completely different techniques for different element combinations in my body caused a bit of havoc with my energy, and I sustained a few internal injuries. These techniques used very different chi filtering principles. The Fire-Earth one was a lower tier, and that may have been the reason for the differences, but it felt like they were built from 2 completely different perspectives on how a dual-element technique should work. Knowing only that the wood-fire technique had a higher rank, I chose to focus on it. To avoid the chaos of energies that was my chest, I began cultivating in my lower right leg. The dual-element technique had a single chi filter that separated wood and fire chi into 2 separate streams and directed them to different muscle groups. After reviewing the peak yellow techniques I had for the 2 elements, I began working to modify that filter. It went poorly and collapsed, flooding my muscles with impurities. Switching to my lower left leg, I tried again, but the results were no different. As the end of the week approached, I sighed and decided to give up. I needed far more experience with dual-element cultivation to make this work, and there were other things I wanted to get done. I would spend some time cultivating this technique normally instead. Then, I would have a much better starting point for modifying it. These difficulties also meant that my dream of creating a 5-element cultivation technique wouldn't be coming true anytime soon. Upgrading the dual-element technique would become a long-term goal, but creating a 5-element technique would need to be completely shelved until I had a wider knowledge base to work from. At this point, my cultivation base was in tatters, and I had been marked as having no affinities by the Sioux clan. I was about to be targeted, and I wasn't going to let the instructor take out his aggression on me during the end-of-week training session, so I popped a poison pill into my mouth.
You have died. Calculating. You died as a Martial Disciple 1. 10 credits awarded.
Total credits, 990,300. The assessment of Martial Disciple 1 was a little surprising since I should have technically been a Martial Disciple 3. I had completed cultivating both my upper arms, after all. Possibly, it was the unresolved wood and earth clash that caused me to have a reduced evaluation. I didn't want to spend too much time stuck on the problem of cultivation, so I put that aside to think about later. Having mid-quality techniques would mainly affect my chi purity, but that could be handled through chi purifying pills. The only problem was that after taking too many of those pills, the toxins would begin to build up. That just meant I needed to be able to make perfect pills, so that wouldn't be a problem. I could already make perfect rank 1 pills, but to make perfect rank 2 pills I needed at least a peak 8-star affinity in all elements, and for rank 3 I needed at least peak 7-star. System, what is the cost to permanently raise all my basic affinities to peak 7-star? Permanent peak 7-star fire, water, earth, wood, and metal affinities. Cost 862,500 credits. That was a serious chunk of my profit from the last life, and I didn't think it would be wise to spend everything on this one area. Better to spread the wealth out a little more. I could still buy temporary affinities at 10% of the cost of permanent ones. Over time, permanent would be a better value, but I had seen the effectiveness of temporarily raising one beyond normal bounds. System, after I raise my fire affinity to peak 7-star, what is the additional cost to raise it temporarily to low 6-star? I asked just to be sure. Temporary low 6-star fire affinities. Additional cost 100,000 credits. That doesn't seem right. The cost of affinities only increased by 10 times for each star level. Shouldn't it be 10,000? 9, 8, and 7-star are considered lower affinities, so the costs increase by 10 times. 6, 5, and 4-star are middle affinities with a cost increase of 100 times. 3, 2, and 1-star are upper affinities which increase the cost by 1,000 times for each star increase. Upgrading my affinities was going to be a huge black hole. I could use the spring in the Twin Mountains sect to improve my fire affinity, but it was limited in how much it could help. It would only help with fire, and it couldn't push an affinity past peak 7-star. Also, I didn't like the idea of needing to sneak into the sect after every restart just to boost an affinity. I needed a better solution. I put a pin in that topic since I needed to move on. I wasn't ready to commit so many credits just yet. Thinking back to my goals from my previous life, the only thing I wanted that I didn't accomplish was acquiring a Spatial Spirit Fire Seed. I hadn't even heard mention of a fire seed other than the Cold Mountain Fire. The sect was not a place where I would find such opportunities. I could venture out and explore trying to find something, but I had no idea how long that would take. System, how much to purchase the cheapest Spirit Fire Seed capable of helping me expand my storage space? Space Attributed Spirit Fire Seed. Cost 500 billion credits. So, not going to happen. System, how much to learn information about the location of a spatial spirit fire I could acquire myself along with the time and circumstances under which I could get it. Cost 350,000 credits. It was expensive, and it would eat into what I needed to raise my affinities, but getting that seed was my most important goal by far. Every moment without it was a moment my storage space wasn't growing. So, upgrading cultivation techniques was put on hold, but I needed to purchase affinities and this information. Was there anything else I needed immediately? I was going to use the wood-fire dual-element technique, but I needed to rework the mental effects to be more suitable for what I wanted to accomplish. I had dozens of cultivation techniques with a variety of mental effects now, so I had a little more freedom to choose how I wanted to modify them. I carefully considered my options. What did I want in this life? I wanted to head outside the wastes this life, and I knew who I would work with to do that. What would help me there? The rank 3 cultivation technique I was going to use would only make the effects of the rank 1 and 2 techniques more intense, so as long as I was happy with the rank 1 and 2 effects, I didn't need to worry about rank 3, which would make things cheaper. I would need to deal with many different people. The techniques I had been using increased my friendliness, which I had begun to not like. The friendliness made it so I capitulated very easily to the demands of others. This wasn't a horrible problem for me, I still got what I needed in the end, but I wanted to go in a different direction. Instead of being friendly, I just wanted to be personable. I wanted to feel free to say no, but I didn't want to be constantly starting fights. I wanted to find novel solutions to problems, so something tending toward inventiveness? I didn't have any techniques to help me there though. I would need to spend long stretches of time simply improving my alchemy. My rank 1 skills were solid, but I could still see room for improvement in rank 2, and my rank 3 skills had massive gaps. That doesn't even begin to consider the higher ranks I hoped to reach. Most importantly, I needed the techniques to only affect my behavior and not my perceptions or memories. That way, when I cut off the mental effects from the techniques, there should be minimal lingering effects. System: how much to change the mental effects of the rank 1 and 2 firewood dual element cultivation techniques so that they improve personability while also making one more dedicated and focused. Cost 101,000 credits. Did I need anything else? System: how much to upgrade my mental technique library so it can hold rank 3 and 4 techniques? Upgrade to rank 3. Cost 90,000 credits. Upgrade to rank 4, an additional 900,000 credits. Alright system, purchase the rank 3 mental bookshelf. Confirmed. Cost 90,000 credits. 900,300 credits remaining. System, purchase requested information about a spatial seed. Confirmed. Cost 350,000 credits. 550,300 credits remaining. Formation Emperor Du Xiongming is currently in possession of a spatial spirit fire seed that meets your requirements. In 127 years, he will die in the Brilliant Sun Empire, located in the southern part of the continent. Upon his death, a war will erupt with many sides fighting to claim his fire seed. If you are present in the capital of the Brilliant Sun Empire at the time of his death, and you have a connection with its ruling dynasty, it may be possible for you to claim this seed as your own upon his death. Credits expended, transaction complete. Formation Emperor. Alchemists were divided into Disciple Alchemists, Master Alchemists, and Grandmaster Alchemists for ranks 1 through 3. Above that, rank 4 would be Pill Lord, rank 5 was Pill King, and rank 6 was called Pill Emperor. Formation Emperor Du Xiongming was a rank 6 Formation Master, and to get a spatial spirit fire seed, it sounded like I would need to rob his corpse. To even have a prayer of pulling that off, I would need to be close to him when he died, which meant I needed to be his peer. A peer to a Formation Emperor had to be at least a Pill King, if not a Pill Emperor. I wasn't sure it was something I could accomplish in a single lifetime, but I would give it my best effort. Truthfully, this mission might be easier if I approached it as a Formation Master, but that would mean learning an entirely new set of skills all the way up to rank 6, and I had no idea how many lives that would take me. It would mean starting from nothing again. No, I would first try approaching it as an alchemist. If this path didn't seem likely to succeed, I would at least be able to parlay my alchemic skills later in life into some basic knowledge of formations to establish a firm starting point. I still needed to raise my affinities and fix my cultivation manuals, but I didn't want to rush that. Wu Jing had a profound level cultivation technique he had promised me in a past life, and I was ready to claim it. System: teleport me to Dragon Gate City. Confirmed. Cost 30 credits. 550,270 credits remaining. I appeared in the poor district of Dragon Gate City and began to make my way towards the Blue Wind Pavilion. How did I want to approach this? Mei should be at the front door of the pavilion, and it shouldn't be too much of a problem to simply recreate my first visit, but was that what I wanted? Did it matter? Mei and Wu Jing both had powerful social blessings, so nothing I did would have too much of an effect on them, but I wasn't sure about the others in the pavilion. Wu Jing was the floor manager of this branch of the Blue Wind Pavilion, so he wasn't the top brass, and I had no information about the people above him. Placing him in a managerial role showed some level of trust, but how much would those people believe in me? Unless I was willing to be Wu Jing's pet alchemist, like I had been for Elder Mu, I needed to put on a show for the higher-ups to make myself appear valuable. At the same time, I needed to make sure it was me that appeared valuable, not one of my possessions, such as the fire seed. Even if the pavilion was trustworthy, owning a treasure was a crime everywhere, so it needed to be clear that I was the treasure, not my possessions. System, I said after ducking into a side alley, I want to purchase robes that would be worn by a respectable disciple alchemist, a young prodigy who is considered to have a bright future. Cost 1,000 credits. That seemed outrageously expensive for a few pieces of clothing, but I had to put my trust in the system here. Was it including a price on information about what young prodigies wear? I had only lived in the Su clan and the Twin Mountain sect, so I didn't know much about local fashions. Purchase it, I quickly decided. Confirmed. Cost 1,000 credits. 549,270 credits remaining. The robes appeared in my system storage, but I didn't rush to put them on. Just by looking at them, I could tell they were something no one in this part of town would be wearing, so I held off until I reached a nicer part of town. The Blue Wind Pavilion was a massive 8-story pagoda that stood on a large marble foundation. The exterior walls were painted a bright red. Azure-tiled eaves stuck out at every floor, and brightly decorated blue beams at the top of the walls, under the eaves, tied everything together. At the corners of the roof, small ridge beast adornments had been placed as auspicious totems. To someone standing on the street in front of it, the Blue Wind Pavilion's presence was supreme. It towered over the small 2- or 3-story wooden buildings surrounding it. I walked down the street towards the pavilion dressed in my new Hanfu robes. They were made of deep black silk. The torso of the robes was pitch black, but below the waistband was a light gray which darkened back to the same black at the hem. Strands of flames had been embroidered in gold and red thread, and as the fabric sifted, the flames almost seemed to dance as sunlight sparkled off them. And more than just looking impressive, I found that formations had been sewn into them to keep them clean and control the temperature. I was the epitome of a young master. I looked like the master of all young masters. I walked down the street with complete confidence, knowing that no one would even think of stopping me, and I felt like a complete fraud. I would never have even considered wearing such an ostentatious outfit on my own, and even though this is what the system had implied would be the normal dress for someone with my abilities, I still wasn't very comfortable in it. The only thing that kept me walking forward was knowing that no matter what I was wearing, May would know how to handle it. In all my time in this world, she was the only person I had ever felt completely comfortable around. I entered the pavilion and was greeted by the noise of countless customers browsing and shopping for goods. The entire place was brightly lit by large windows on every wall and small glowing orbs in dozens of chandeliers. I looked around to see if I could find May, but as I was turning, a young woman dressed in the blue and silver qipao dress of a pavilion attendant approached me.
Hello, sir.
My name is Yi Suyin. How can I help you today? She said, clasping her hands and giving a bow. Suyin was young and pretty, and her smile revealed dimpled cheeks. She was a little shorter than the other attendants, but since everyone was wearing the same qipao, and everyone's hair was fixed in the same elaborate bun with a jade hairpin and golden comb, it was hard to tell one attendant from the next. I had wanted to speak with May first, but as a budding, young, magnanimous alchemist, it would be wrong to simply turn this girl away. While I hadn't cultivated the technique to force myself to be more personable yet, that was still the persona I wanted to embody. Hello, I said, nodding my head to Suyin, I would like to see your alchemic pills. Please show me what rank 1 pills you offer and let me know their prices. Right this way, sir, she said, guiding me to the right side of the pavilion. She led me to rows of glass counters that held a wide variety of jade pill bottles. We have a variety of rank 1 and rank 2 pills for sale. We also have contracts with Grandmaster's alchemists who can help us procure most rank 3 pills. All our pills are high purity with an efficacy of over 90%, and for a small premium, we can guarantee pills above 95% efficacy. And what types of pills do you sell? We maintain a stock of all commonly requested pills, including qi gathering pills, purifying pills for every qi type, healing pills, antidote pills, qi empowerment pills, and even explosive pills. As she talked, she gestured to various counters. For less common pill types, we have alchemists that can prepare most pills you could request. If the request is exceeding rare, as long as you provide a pill formula, if we have the herbs in stock, we guarantee a high-purity 90% effective pill within a day for any rank 1 pill. We cannot guarantee a time frame for higher rank pills, but we can procure them. If the recipe uses especially rare ingredients that we do not stock, further negotiations may be required. All of your pills are high purity? Yes, she said confidently. And not just passable. Our rank 1 pills are among the best high-purity pills available. Do you sell perfect pills? For the first time, Suyin became hesitant. Perfect pills are exceedingly rare, and they are unavailable at this branch. If that is what you require, they are possible to procure, but they will need to be ordered from another branch. If you are willing to wait, they can be added to a standard delivery, but if you need them soon, the extra fee would be substantial. What are the costs? I decided to ask. Let's say for a basic qi gathering pill. The basic price is 20 silver. If you want one with guaranteed higher efficacy, it is 25. And for a perfect one, the base price would be 50 silver, with a guaranteed efficacy of at least 99%. However, again, we do not carry them in stock. Ordering them from another branch would require time and money, and most customers would consider the exchange unacceptable. What if I do not lack money and am willing to wait? I asked. We can accommodate you, but I would recommend a higher level pill. We can guarantee the same efficacy on a perfect superior qi gathering pill for 2 gold. Since you would be delayed anyway, the extra time could be used to prepare to absorb the more powerful pill. I nodded at her explanation. While she was trying to upsell me, It did make sense in this situation, as long as I wasn't concerned about the price. What are the prices for purifying pills? The base price is 1 gold each, with a 10% additional cost for higher guaranteed efficacy. What if I sold you a high-purity water qi purifying pill at 95% efficacy? How much would you pay? Su-Yin seemed to have expected that question and quickly responded. Our general price for buying pills is 35% of the profit plus the cost of ingredients. Such a pill would sell for 1 gold, and the cost of ingredients is 40 silver, so the standard purchase price is 61 silver, but that can fluctuate with availability and demand. It was interesting that she freely shared a solid calculation with me. In the past, I was just given a purchase price. I doubted she had a blessing like May's, so was this just the effect of presenting myself as a respectable person? Can you take me to see your herbs? I asked.
This way, sir.
She guided me to a nearby collection of shelves. The moment I passed an invisible threshold, my nose was assaulted by the fragrance of the various herbs. Many of them were sitting openly in bins where customers could pick up and examine them. Some had been placed in sealed boxes, and a few were locked under a glass display case. As expected, the rank 1 herbs were all pretty standard. Since mortal farmers could easily harvest high-quality rank 1 herbs, they held little value, and I had never seen examples that had been improved by an herbalist. The rank 2 herbs were surprisingly high quality though. Those displayed openly were nearly the same quality as the rank 1 herbs, and those held under lock and key had an immense amount of medicinal energy stored within. It would be a joy to work with them. I considered my situation. I didn't have much money. While I could buy some from the system, that would be a ludicrous waste of credits. Hopefully what I had would be enough to get started, but I could sell some of the pills from my storage space to gather more if needed. Still, this entire encounter wasn't going the way I had initially hoped. I had planned to quickly get into contact with Wu Jing in a way that he would treat me as a friend. I guess it didn't matter too much. It was all an act anyway, and he would only be behaving as directed, but I longed for a feeling of camaraderie. Even if he was just trying to get something from me, he would at least know how to act like that wasn't the case. I sighed and pondered my options as I continued to peruse the herbs. After a few moments, I walked back over to Su-Yin. Could you please show me around a little more? What else do you offer?
Of course, sir.
I can give you a tour. As she began to guide me away from the herbs, another woman dressed in the same blue and silver qipao approached us. Su-Yin, she said with a smile, let me take it from here.
May, Su-Yin stuttered. But,
don't worry, said May, you'll receive proper credit and compensation, but I need to handle this. Then, May turned to me and smiled. Welcome back to the Blue Wind Pavilion. Our manager, Chen Wu Jing, is eager to meet with you.
Please follow me.
I smiled at May and nodded.
Sure. Let's go.